Greetings, glory to God in the highest, and on earth, peace to people of goodwill. So, this is the second attempt of a live stream that I attempted last night. You see, yesterday on Berean TV, that show's co-host, no, yesterday being August 11th, 2024, but the what I would consider the veritable co-host of Berean TV, that being Dunamis, he had a discussion with two members of the Yap gang, that being Orthodox Moor and Sean Harris, and during that discussion, or during the last 2.5 hours of the live show itself, they basically reviewed a bunch of my old videos on DNA, and and they offered their comments and tried to put them in context and explored the arguments. And I jumped on briefly as well for like 5 minutes. Now, humorously, as you can see on the screen, the title of that live is Another Live Coming Down. And what that's a reference to is the fact that several of Berean's previous lives have been taken down, whether they've been set to private or YouTube has taken them down for some copyright infringement or whatever. I don't know. But a lot of lives have, unfortunately, live shows on Berean TV have been, they've been lost, unfortunately. And so I have what I think is a legitimate concern that this live as well might get taken down. And so I wanted to save the portion in which I'm mentioned, which again is the last 2.5 hours of this marathon show. You might be able to see on your screen that the live as a whole went more than 7 hours, but the last 2 hours was, Orthodox Moor, Dunamis, and then Sean Harris reviewing some of my videos. And I really wanted to capture that. And I also wanted to capture the comments in the live chat. And I figured the simplest way to do that would be just for myself to go live, because this is a lot of footage, 2 hours of footage. So I figured the easiest way to do this would be just for me to go live and just screen share the episode and let it play, right? And so here we are. I attempted to do this last night, but I think my Wi-Fi crashed and that little experiment failed. So I'm just going to try this one more time. I'm not very experienced with going live, but I figured this is the best option for capturing these last 2 hours. So here we are. Once again, we're going to dive into this veritable Abu Khamr video retrospective. I call it that because basically they're going over my past videos. And as you might be able to see on the screen, we're going to pick this up at slightly after the 4 hour and 42-minute mark. And I'm just going to let it play. I'll be in this video's chat, I guess, to interact with people if anyone comes in. I know it's pretty early, but mainly my intention here is just to capture this. So that's the main intention here. But like I said, we'll be picking this up at slightly after the 4 hour, 42-minute mark. And for anyone who does watch this, enjoy and God bless.
Brandon, if you can share my screen. And so now, just a question more. So, more, how do we know that you're being fair? How do we know now that you just bowed out to say you're not Bloodline Israel, that you're not trying to disrupt the community and COINTELPRO and whatnot? That's some people will try to be a conspiracy.
You fact check me. You fact check me. It's that simple. And I'm here to be fact checked. Because if someone said in the chat at one point that I'm smart, but I be freestyle. Like, no, I don't freestyle. I make sure very hard that I don't speak past what I can prove and whatnot. And if I ever make a mistake, I go correct it in public.
Yeah, because it does seem like with Yap, there's respect because Yeshua said he's not Bloodline. You said, I think Evie might have said it, but y'all like DNA and trying to get to the truth.
If I'm Bloodline, that means none of y'all are Bloodline. I got the most, so I'm a subclade of EM132, right? Like, I have one of the smallest percentage clades out of African Americans out of everybody. So if I'm the joint, none of y'all are the joint.
Yep, and all those verses that deal with servitude and whatnot, if the whole Bloodline argument holds true, then you have Gentiles teaching and preaching, and you have those who are going to be the servants telling you that they're the master. So a lot of doctrine would have to change. And maybe some of those passages don't mean what folks are saying.
Man, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the mark of the new covenant was that no man had to teach you the thing.
Yeah, well, except for the millennial reign. That's where it gets, yeah. But yeah. Come on, I got this video up with you and Abu, Dante's Haplogroup 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see if anything has changed. What's your view? Right? Fair use.
Greetings. Back in August, I made a brief video titled, "What Did Abu Khamr Say About Dante Fortson's Y DNA?" And the rhyme wasn't intentional. And as it was, that video was simply a compilation of things which I had said somewhat on the fly while appearing on different live shows. The presentation came out a bit sloppy. So for a while now, I felt like a bit more clarification might be needed, but I was unsure if I should make another video on the topic. Well, as luck would have it, however, the video was brought up last night on Berean's live show, which was a show titled Mormons and Israelites. The show was nearly 4 hours long, but actually it was nearly 5 hours long, if I recall correctly. But I caught it towards the end, roughly in the last half hour or so. Initially, I was offering comments in the live chat, but I wound up getting invited to join the discussion, to take part in the live discussion for a brief few minutes. And during that time, I attempted to clarify my understanding of the subject of Dante's Y chromosomal haplogroup. Unfortunately, however, after the live show went off the air, it quickly received a copyright strike, and it's apparently no longer available, at least not in the United States. But I managed to capture some key portions of the discussion, so I wanted to make this quick video to present a sort of boiled down version of what I said, and then, build upon it by providing a bit more information to support what I had said last night. So we're going to pick up at the point where the discussion turned to Dante's paternal haplogroup. To give some background, a panelist had offered some thoughts contrasting Dante with a person who has a haplogroup E1B1B. Dante responded to that. He was in the live chat, and he responded to that with a super chat, which read, quote, "According to Abu, I'm E1B1B. Check his channel," end quote. Now, when he said check my channel, he was referencing my video from last August. Of course, Dante's comment raises a legitimate question, which is, why should one agree with me? Like, surely he wasn't saying that people should just take my word for it. I think we all would agree that, perhaps I could be mistaken in this regard. Hence why, for that reason, I thought it would be appropriate to make this video now to sort of provide the reasoning behind what was said. Now, for anyone interested, I'll provide links to my different sources in the video description. So with that, I'm going to play about 3.5 minutes of different clips from Berean's show, and then I'll attempt to elaborate. Here we go.
You read that. You see the screen? Go in Abu E1B. Abu, jump on here.
So I just want to point out, and we have more videos. We've been talking about DNA for a long time. We've dealt with some of the top leaders, top researchers, top teachers in Israel. Dante Fortson, Benaiah, several, right? Pastor Stephen Darby has passed, but we played several of his videos. So we're not new to this discussion, right? And it's not that we're just interlopers. We've discussed, and we had other people part of the community to have these discussions as well. So there's been multiple eyes looking at it, multiple discussions, multiple perspectives. This is 2 years ago, and we don't talk about it further back than that. Fair use.
E1B1B.
Yeah.
Check your channel. Give me that. Put that link in here, Baru.
I would love to address it.
Go ahead. Yeah, read Abu. Let me say Abu. Read the screen. Second example, you. I don't know, G-Con driver. Read this screen. Is Abu talking crazy or not right now on this screen?
It says Dante is closely related paternally to some Natufians. His haplogroup is EL29, a subclad of E1B1B. That's correct.
Hey, wait a minute.
West Central Africa.
The 16-second mark? Is it you sure you want the 16-second mark? All right. Good. I don't know if he write the 16-second. 16-second. This is it right here. Then Abu, I'm going to hit you a messenger. All right, here. Hold on. Just hold on a second. Come on. Do me a favor. Just explain it right now. Just explain it right now for me. Oh, Dante is in there. Go ahead, Abu.
Forgive me. I won't be on long. I have to jump off very soon.
I'm going to.
But yeah, no, it wasn't. I myself am skeptical of a lot of the appeals to GEDmatch, but this was not based on GEDmatch. It was based on what he showed from 23andMe. And this isn't a general appeal to just like the E haplogroup like some people do. his haplogroup, according to 23andMe, is EL29, and that's a subclade of E1B1B, and more specifically, it's a subclade of EM34. So, which is a more specific, it's something that was found amongst at least 2 of the Natufian samples. That's all. So it is fair to say that at least Dante, I'm not saying this about everybody, at least Dante is closely related, relatively closely related paternally to the
brown skinned people. To the brown skinned people.
Well, I don't know what they look like. They might have looked exactly like him, or maybe they look different. But as Second Exodus said, it's not so much an issue of morphology. It's a question of lineage. So I would also say, Dante is closely related perhaps to Albert Einstein, as well. So,
oh, hell.
I'm just saying. I can't stay on long, but I just wanted to clarify that since you gave me the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. All right. No matter of fact, hold on one second. Is that Hamite DNA, yes or no? Is that Hamite DNA, yes or no? Because
I want to say this real clear. I don't accuse anyone of being a Hamite. I have no idea who Ham or Shem, what their haplogroup was, so I don't accuse anyone of being a Hamite, and I don't think you can determine that based on morphology. I mean, there could be Hamites who are quote-unquote black, and there could be Hamites today who are quote-unquote white in terms of their appearance. I don't accuse anyone of being a Hamite or a Semite or anything. I'm just saying that if we're going by paternal lineage, paternally he is more closely related to the Natufians than a lot of other people who might be, in the chat today. That's all I'm saying.
Wow.
Okay. His stuff. But putting all that aside, this wasn't an argument about E1E in general. It was more specifically Dante's haplogroup. Not everybody. Dante is E1B1B. It's a subclade of E1B1B and a subclade of EM34. So to be fair, if we're fair and honest, according to his 23andMe results, he's relatively closely related paternally to the Natufians. That's to some Natufians. That's all. And forgive me, I got to run.
Okay, so now I'd like to elaborate on what I said on the show. To begin, when Berean was attempting to bring up a screen which appeared 16 seconds into my video, that was the timestamp for when Dante's haplogroup was shown. It was actually an excerpt from a video Dante himself had done last November in which he showed his 23andMe results. Now, to provide a bit of context for that, during Berean's show last night, there was some discussion on whether Dante's haplogroup was E1B1A or E1B1B, and whether or not the claim that he's E1B1B might be mistaken, or if it's based on perhaps a misunderstanding of a GEDmatch result or something else. So with that in mind, on your screen is the video which Dante did last November in which he showed his 23andMe results that I just mentioned. I'm going to play a very brief portion from just before the 1 hour mark when he shows his paternal haplogroup.
And then my paternal is going to be E-L29. We're going to talk about that.
Okay, so this is what Dante showed on his screen. This is the result he got from 23andMe. So his paternal haplogroup is EL29. Now the question becomes, if one claims that that haplogroup is connected to E1B1B, on what grounds do they do so, right? Because as far as I can see, 23andMe didn't explicitly say that this is a subclade of E1B1B. So this is the entry for the Y chromosomal haplogroup EL795 on the website haplogroup.org. And again, I'll share a link in the video description. For now, I'm going to scroll down to the technical details for this haplogroup. Towards the bottom of the page, it lists the defining variants for this haplogroup. And notice that listed among them is EL29. So Dante having haplogroup EL29 entails him having a variant of EL795. Now, that's important because with some sources, when you try to look up EL29, you're going to be directed to EL795, as we'll see in a moment. So with that in mind, I'd like to now turn to the SNP or SNP tracker over at scaledinnovation.com. Now, this is a helpful online tool because it allows you to look at some of the history of different paternal and maternal haplogroups. Now, quick note, when you do a search for a paternal haplogroup, you want to make sure the gender symbol is set to male. If it were set to female, it would look like this, and that's what you would choose when searching for a maternal haplogroup. But in this video, we want to look up Dante's paternal haplogroup, so we set the gender symbol to male. And now I'm going to enter into the search Dante's haplogroup, E-L29. And once that's in, you can click go. And upon doing so,
you'll notice that one of the tabs you can choose from reads SNPs or SNPs, which stands for single nucleotide polymorphisms. And when you click on that tab, it will give you the history of descent for the haplogroup you entered into the search, which in this case is EL29. Now, when you scroll down, you'll find the relevant haplogroup that you searched for in the bottom row, right? This is giving the history of the haplogroup that you searched for. In this case, as EL29 is a variant of EL795, note that our search for EL29 gives us EL795 on the bottom row. And as I said in the discussion, Dante's haplogroup is a subclade of EM34. However, I should probably add a point of clarification. In the discussion, I said EM34 was found amongst some Natufian samples. But what I should have said is EM34 is itself a descendant or a subclade of EM35. And it was EM35 which has been found among certain Natufian samples. Now, with that in mind, notice that on the right, certain rows have a skull icon. If you see a skull icon on a given row, that means that there are known ancient samples which have that haplogroup. So let's focus on the skull icon for EM35, which again is upstream from Dante's haplogroup, or put another way, Dante's haplogroup descends from EM35. So let's click the skull icon for that haplogroup to look at some of the ancient samples which bear it. When you do so, you get this pop-up window providing a list of ancient samples. Now, notice that the two oldest samples, dating to nearly 13,000 years ago, are from the Levant. These are among the Natufian samples. Now, as we X out of there, we can also note the skull icon for M215. That's the haplogroup E1B1B proper, from which EM35 descends. Now, when we click the skull icon and pull up the list of ancient samples for that haplogroup, note that for this haplogroup too, the oldest known sample is from the Levant. Now, interestingly, on the website haplotree.info, one can pull up a list of ancient samples found in Palestine, or, as they say, Israel. And once you have that list, you can compare that to the history of descent for Dante's haplogroup, which we just looked at. Now, if I'm reading this correctly, it seems to be the case that although the oldest samples from Palestine, for which a paternal haplogroup has been proposed, although those samples differ from one another, it's nonetheless the case that every single one is upstream from Dante's haplogroup.
Yeah, Boo. Boo, if you have time, you can jump on. We're just going back over the DNA talks over the years, right? And so, dealing with your discussion with Dante Fortson haplogroup, right? What does the breakdown look like, right? If you got time to jump on with this discussion, got a few seconds left. Just 2 minutes left. Let me just finish off. And then, yeah, but we got time. You can jump on, please.
Or to put that another way, Dante's haplogroup is a downstream subclade for any particular haplogroup found amongst Natufian samples. And this is apparently true no matter which sample one chooses. I imagine some might find that interesting. So with that, I'll close here with what I think is a quick disclaimer, a disclaimer that might be needed. I just want to state that I do not claim to know who today does or does not descend from Jacob, okay? Or any other biblical figure for that matter, such as Ham or Shem or Japhet. As I've said before, there is at least a decent probability that Dante might descend paternally from Jacob, but I'm not claiming it has been definitively proven that he actually does. But I would say that it cannot be ruled out as far as I can see. So it would be a mistake to say, no, I know for a fact that Dante doesn't descend from Jacob. That seems baseless, or at least if someone's going to say that, they need to provide a good reason for that. Another thing I should probably note is that in this video, I was referring to specifically Dante, not anyone else. So, not anyone outside of his particular haplogroup. Whatever the case, I do think that there's much more to be said. There's a lot more to be said, as this is honestly a complex subject. So with that, I'll close here by welcoming the comments and criticisms of others. Right? I look forward to all your comments. As always, God bless.
God bless you. Abu, if you just put in the comment section about what percentage of African Americans has Dante's haplogroup. What percentage? More if you can speak to that.
Oh, that's less than 3%.
Less than 3%.
Yeah.
Good. So, in terms of numbers wise, Dante's haplogroup could fit in your model, but that would still harm a lot of claims made by those.
Yeah, and so what Dante would represent in my model would be, again, we were talking about like the concept of people who are converts, and if they're converts, there's got to be people who are doing the converting and whatnot, right? And so Dante's particular subclade you can find basically in large number in 3 places. You can find it in like East Africa, Southern Arabia. You can find it in places in the Western Sahel, and you can also find it in places in West Sahel and Maghreb, and also in Southern Europe and whatnot, right? So he comes from one of those 3 populations. I would love for him to do like a big Y to find out which one he comes from. But even if he doesn't come from the population of East Africa and Southern Arabia, whatnot, it's definitely documentable that these migrations were coming in from these areas, and also from the Levant, and also from like Egypt and other places in the Maghreb, etc. Right? And so, like you keep pointing to Dunamis, though, like they would be a small percentage of our modern population and whatnot, right? In terms of just blood lineage. So most people's connection would be to the converts in that sense, right? If so Abu, somebody who agrees with us, like if you make us choose between like E and J, which one makes more sense to be a descendant of Abraham, we're all going to say E. People like vocab are going to say J, and it's just a scholastic difference on that. Right? We have our arguments for why we say which. Again, we went on vocab channel and made our arguments for why we say which. So, but even if like let's just say our model is correct, and you go with E being the lineage of Abraham and whatnot, but the people who are E1B1A might not be direct descendants, but they would still be cousins thereof, right? And so we were talking about the concept of like 60-70% of African Americans being like descendants of Shem, but potentially, but not being descendants of Abraham, etc. Right? And so. But that doesn't seem to be good enough for a lot of people, which is interesting to me, right?
No, it has to be all or majority or yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be a supernatural special people and whatnot, and I find that to be amazing because even being a descendant of Shem's not good enough, right? And coming through like that's not good enough. That's crazy to me, right? Because that could, if that's real, that's a major thing, right? That would be a major thing to scholastically walk out. But they're like, no, I don't want to even touch that because you're saying I'm not the bloodline or whatnot. You're saying that I would come from converts, like what happens with every other population of world Jewry, where they go other places, they convert people, just like with the Limba, right? So you have Limba that have a particular haplogroup, but you also have Limba, like I showed, that have a bunch of other haplogroups, right? There's Limba with E1B1A. They weren't coming in from Arabia. Well, they potentially could have. There's E1B1A in Arabia and whatnot, right? We would have to test them further to figure out if their E1B1A came in, if they had E1B1As that came in with them from Arabia. But they say that they were a small group of men. I think it's like 8 or 12, something like that, right? That went to East Africa and mixed with the women there, right? And then with that, they expanded amongst the men that were in the women's tribes and whatnot. They were like, if you're converting people, you know what I'm saying? Like that's how that works. And so they got more haplogroups than you can shake a stick at amongst the women. They got K, they got F, they got all kind of J's. They got E1B1A, E1B1B. They got the whole nother I think E2, something like that, right? They got all kind of stuff.
Yeah, and especially the merchants. You know what I'm saying? It's not uncommon to where merchants go into an area and people just adopt the faith.
Mm-hmm.
But a camaraderie, sometimes it's false conversions, but over time, the children might really be true believers.
100%.
So, yeah, but more. Abu said something in that video.
Yeah.
And this from 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to Jed Match? Why is no one talking about Jed Match anymore?
Because Jed Match got shown to be more of like an autosomal test that's run off of profiles and not like direct genetic linkage to peoples and whatnot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, break that down because you remember the fights, people saying lawsuits and the things of that nature. Okay, let me see. Hold on.
So yeah, so what GEDmatch does is they'll take a population of people and then they'll well, how to say this? So first and foremost, the different projects within GEDmatch, the different calculators, they're not all made by the same people. GEDmatch is an open source project kind of a thing, to where the original one they started off with was I forgot the name of it, but it was just one, and then it started going off from there and whatnot. And different people started making their own models off of the open sourcing of the GEDmatch information and whatnot. And so what they do with that is they take a group of people like the Limba, because this is why it got so popular, right? Is people were getting matches with Limba, and they'll take a population. They'll say, okay, what percentage of you are of sub-Saharan African? What percentage are you of Western European? What percentage are you of this, that, and the third, right? And they make a profile of this is what we believe Limba to be. And so when they look at your autosomal DNA, again, there's nothing being tracked via Y-DNA or mtDNA or like the X chromosome, etc. It's just autosomal DNA that they're looking at. Most African Americans have a decent amount of European admixture in their admixture, right? And so the Limba also have, out of all Africans, they have the highest amount of European admixture, right? Eurasian admixture. And so when we were going into GEDmatch was saying that we have, out of all the people in Africa. So again, their profile is saying like, so an African American is like 80% sub-Saharan African, 20% European, for instance, right? Out of a West African is going to be like 99% sub-Saharan African, 1% European, right? A Limba is going to be, again, closer to what an African American is going to be. They're probably going to be like 85% sub-Saharan African, like 15%, something of that nature, right? And so you can actually go into GEDmatch and look at these profiles and how they break them down and whatnot, right? But so they were matching us up to the Limba based upon the fact that we both have high Eurasian admixture in comparison to other Africans and whatnot. Not for any straight blood type, blood descendancy, or like chromosome comparison or haplogroup connection, none of that.
So people took it further when GEDmatch is 4. Mm-hmm. And they kind of like got to a certain point to where they can back up the claim. So they silently departed from it. Yeah,
100%. Because they were getting matches like Limba, Ethiopian Jews, etc., right? Yemenite Jews, and again, these are going to be people who have higher Eurasian admixture.
That's we got some videos with that, but I got this one. Abu says about the video. The video which is about to play has a methodological flaw. I mistook speculative origin point assigned to clades for actual samples, but I stand by the conclusion E1B1A will be found in the Levant. More two questions. One from Reddy Brew. Mm-hmm. What percentage of African American community has maternal as well as paternal haplogroups of the Levant? And if you just break down real quick, what's the difference between E1B1A, E1B1B? That's always going to come up. So we just got to run through that again as well.
So what'd you say about E1? The last part about E1B1A, E1B1B?
What's the difference? Are E1B1A? They'll say that E1B1A, E1B1B, mm-hmm. a common ancestor that could be Abraham. Something of the sort.
Yeah,
like, you know what I'm talking about, like the way. So basically, that both could be Israel, both could be Abraham, things of the sort.
So the only way that could be is if Abraham was EP2, and he had children that split apart. Well, no, again that. So we used to talk about this in Yap Gang and whatnot, right? Because at one point, like there was a study that talked about like so Abu was just going over the bodies in Levant, right? And going over the E1B1Bs and whatnot. At one point in time, they used to believe one of the Natufian remains was EP2. So that gave us this thing to look at. To like, okay, EP2 is the father of E1B1A and E1B1B. So we see E1B1B there, and we see EP2 there. It's very possible that we could see E1B1A there coming off the EP2 very soon, right? Eventually, it got shown that the EP2 was also E1B1B. So if I were to see EP2 in the Levant, I'd be right there with you. I'm like, yeah, it's a possibility to let the downstream of that could like you could see it going both ways or whatnot, right? Potentially, right? But I don't really see that. The app doesn't really see that. We see EP2 coming more through like a Sahelian route into West Africa, whatnot, coming through like we see it in Central Arabia, like Southern Arabia, etc., whatnot, and other places, whatnot, and then coming through East Africa, going into the Sahel, going into West Africa, whatnot. We don't really see it in the Levant like that. Not that it's not there, right? Because there's definitely bodies that they're sitting on, you know what I'm saying? But it doesn't seem likely based upon what we see at the moment, right? Like I've been saying for years, what seems most likely is E1B1B, based upon the people claiming descendancy, like Muslims claiming descendancy from Muhammad that are being either E1B1B or J. Descendants of Jacob being either E1B1B or J. Even with the people claiming descendancy of Jethro with the Jews and other people, right? Like being the same thing, right? Being a mixture of those two haplogroups and others, right? But I think the first question, what's the percentage of the breakdown of
African American community that has maternal as well as paternal haplogroups of the Levant?
So out of the Levant, we see some L3 markers that are in the Levant at certain points in time in terms of the maternal haplogroups. I think there's another L we can see up there. So there's specific clades that we see, right? And so this is the one thing that we really need to slow down. And I shout out to Yeshua for this, because he got everybody doing their big Y and finding out their specific clades and whatnot. And we're finding out so basically when you get a DNA test back based upon the STR count of the short tandem repeats, so they'll tell you and other things. They'll tell you what your SMP is, what your terminal SNP is, right? And so with Dante, for instance, they said that he was a descendant of EM34, like EL29, etc. If he were to take his big Y, it gets super specific, right? So a lot of people, they see that they get like E1B1A and like, oh, it's all the same thing. No. There's so many different E1B1As and E1B1Bs, like the subclades. Oh, it's crazy. It's super crazy. So for instance, like Sean and Yeshub have basically this they descend from the same paternal haplogroup or whatnot, right? But Yeshub ends up going back to a E1B1A that was in Arabia, for instance, right? Like, so there is like E1B1As in the area and whatnot, and at different time periods and whatnot, right? But it doesn't seem to be from the time period that people are looking for. We don't have any evidence thereof of it being in Levant. Like in terms of it being in like East Africa and Arabia, all day. We got that there. Hence the app talks about them being in the mixed multitude all day, right? But in terms of percentages of Levantine haplogroups, I would put the male percentage at, because it's going to differ like in the diaspora. Like I said, for instance, it's going to be a little bit higher in South America than it's going to be in North America. In South America, they got all kind of E1B1Bs that you can find in that area. They got all kind of J's you can find in that area. I would put it to less than, like, if I'm going to put like the Caribbean and North America together, etc., I will put it less than 7% for the male side. And for the female side, we have to look at that one a lot more, because we have one female in YAP, and she happens to be an L3 that's connected to that Levantine, that has the same kind of connection to that Levantine population. But I don't know the percentage of women who have that particular clade or relevant clades that are amongst African American populations and whatnot. Because when it comes to the DNA test, it seems to be a lot more men taking these things than women, and there's not a lot of correlation of the mtDNA, and in terms of like the X chromosome or whatnot, like what the haplogroups are. I haven't seen a lot of it. We see a lot of studies on the men more than the women and whatnot. But you do see groups in southern. You see groups amongst the Western Sahel and in all the part, like basically the majority of the parts of Africa were taken from, to where the women end up having like L3 went everywhere, right? L3 was traveling, fam. Just know that one. Like we're talking like you're at like in Asia, Africa, everywhere. L3 was going places, right? But in terms of the specific subclades, like so again, we're talking about doing the big Y with the men and whatnot. The women aren't really doing it so much. So I can't tell you how many have specific subclades there, right? I can tell you this: it's like the women would probably be a larger percentage than the men, though, and that's just my estimation when I look at it. I see L3 populations all over the place in West Africa, right? More so than I see populations that are going to be E1B1B based. We see that more going into like the Sahara in North Africa and in East Africa. We definitely see it. We definitely see E1B1B in the Western Sahel, and we definitely see it in West Africa and whatnot. But in terms of what's going to be the higher percentage, I would estimate that you're going to see L3. And again, I can't clarify. I can't claim this like 100% because like there's a specific set of claims of L3 we see in the Levant. There's a lot of L3s, right? This is why I got to be careful with this. We don't know which subclades are the majority and minorities yet, right? Because that information is not necessarily coming out. When they're taking DNA tests, they take them at a really high really low STR count. So they're given like a generic L3 type thing, right? We need to be able to test it deeper and larger STR counts and whatnot. So we can really find out which specific L3, right? Because not everyone's going to be that L3 that's in the Levant.
What if that answer your question? Now, I don't know if you have time. What if to jump on? I see Sean here jumped on. Go ahead.
Hey, what up, OG?
Yeah.
What's going on? Shalom.
Hey, shalom. Grace and peace, everybody. Yeah, to my bro, Moor.
Yeah, it was good.
Ain't nothing. So, yeah, the question that I jumped on for was about EP2 or E1B1A and E1B1B, the difference in between them. I think Moore explained it correctly. There was a point in time. Well, let's start from here. In order for Israel to have E1B1A and E1B1B, then that would mean that Abraham would have had to be EP2. And we believe that EP2 or E1B1 is older than Abraham. The mutation, EP2. EP2. I think I forgot what the next question was. Right after that, I want to speak on.
The one with the African American communities and.
No, he answered that one pretty. He did a good job with that one. It was can't remember. It'll come back to me in a second. But I just want to jump in. Me and Yeshub having EU290, and so my particular mutation of EU290 is only 200 years younger than it broke off 2 years, 200 years after EU290 formed. So there are downstreams of my particular mutation that did go into Arabia. All right, downstreams. All right, but yeah, and my particular mutation had spun off or gave rise to 10 different subclades. Yeshub's particular terminal SNP that came off of EU290 did arise in Arabia. So I just want to clarify that. His particular terminal SNP is much younger than mine's off of EU290.
Mm-hmm. And to be clear, I think yours went like the subclades of yours that went to Arabia, they went to Southern Arabia, right? And then his clade was in Northern Arabia.
Yeah, mine is more around Central Arabia, southern to Central Arabia. His is a little bit more north.
Yeah, and real quick, something I want to say about the EP2 argument is like, so if you want to, if this is another issue with the EP2 argument, right? Why I didn't make the argument was that when you look at where you can find EP2, right? Like once it's not in the Levant, right? You basically have to make the argument that like Southern Arabia is where Israel is at, or where the Levant is supposed to be, whatnot, right? And you got to make the argument that everything's happening from there, because that's where you're going to see EP2 more so than what you're going to see in the Levant, right? And so that's going to be an interesting story to walk out or whatnot, right? And so that has a lot of implications to it. A lot of, like, so Israel's not going to be where Israel's at if you go with the EP2 method, is all I'm saying.
So it's not possible that he could be, and there's a mass mutation or something happened of the sort.
So there's like, so you can have like hyper mutations and whatnot to where like based upon like certain stuff going on in the population, to where you can see people splitting off like that.
Yeah,
right?
rapid radiation.
Yeah, rapid radiation. You can see it happening, right? It happens in nature, and whatnot, right? But the likelihood of it coming from EP2 is it's super unlikely based upon what we're seeing. And again, that's based upon what we're seeing. We're not claiming to have all the biases. Like there's people in the chat recognizing this is something he beats the table for this all the time, is that there's bodies being sat on that they're not showing people. We don't have the full genetic spectrum of what the Levant should be looking like based upon the bodies that they do have, right? But based upon what we can look at, we can't make the EP2 argument anymore, because the one source of EP2 we saw in the Levant got turned into E1B1B.
Right. Also, for a good example of rapid radiation would be my own personal terminal SNP off of EU290. It mutated just 200 years after EU290 was formed. And then that spun off into 10 more downstream terminal SNPs. So, that's a good example of rapid radiation. Within 2 years, my particular terminal SNP spun off, or it's still a part of EU290, but it's just mutation, one mutation that gave it its own terminal SNP, and that happened within a 200-year span.
Bring Abu up. Okay, and the only reason I ask that is because that is a argument people raise that could it be a rapid mutation, or it's possible that even when dealing with like Jacob and his sons, that maybe they rapidly mutated from Jacob to his sons to where there could be multiple haplogroups. So it's kind of the new people that are coming around making DNA claims. So we just kind of go over all the bases.
Rapid radiation would just give it new terminal SNPs. All right, but they will all still fall under one umbrella. So whatever parent of that, like let's say my terminal SNP, like I said, it mutated, downstream. There were downstream mutations, and there were 10 different ones. So 10 different subclades, all for just mines alone. So it's possible, but it would have one parent. So which would be my terminal SNP.
E can turn to J, E can turn to R, E can turn to Q.
No, all of those are non-YAP. All of those are non-YAP positive haplogroups. So we haven't found a non-YAP to turn into a YAP positive. We haven't seen that.
Okay. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But again, it's an argument that people try to raise is where Jacob's sons could all have different haplogroups, but it would have, no matter what, it's a tree. So there has to be some kind of commonality. I see what the Levant is where African Hebrews migrated to. This is why we find E in the Levant. Let me see. Berean, if you can let Abu up. But in the meantime, let me play this video.
Well, we see E in the Levant. Well, he's saying it. Real quick, when you say African Hebrews, what do you mean? Are you saying Israelites or what are you saying? Because we find E in the Levant way before the time of Abraham, way before the time of Jacob, way before the time of Isaac.
Right. So that would mean that it would Israel would be a sub. It would be a sub. Downstream. It would be a grouping of a small percentage of the whole E tree, because it goes back so far. But Abu said the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Exactly right. Yes,
the apple.
Let me let this play. Fair use.
Greetings. Occasionally, when perusing discussions about Hebrew Israelites, paternal lineages, and DNA, I'll see someone triumphantly declare that no sample of E1B1A has been found in the Levant. Now, in private conversations over the last couple of years, I've told a few different people that I don't think it's particularly prudent to lean so enthusiastically into that sort of polemic, as I honestly think that it's nigh inevitable that ancient samples of E1B1A will eventually be found in the Levant. And, I've previously thought about making a brief video on this topic, sharing my thoughts.
Well, Boo, since you're here, go straight to the source. I know you don't have much time.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. Thanks for having me on. You can hear me?
Yeah.
No, you can play the video, but I just wanted to give this one sort of disclaimer and also a clarification. So there's a key premise in this video that turns out to be mistaken. I was mistaken, but I think the argument still holds with a slight correction. So in this video that you're about to play, and it's a short video, I'm going to argue that there have been found samples of E1B1A have been found all around the Levant. Turns out I was mistaken. I misunderstood what I was looking at. But what is going to be shown are the speculative origin points for various clades that are downstream from E1B1A. So meaning some student of genetics speculated that this is the likely origin point for a particular clade of E1B1A, right? Now we could say it's speculative, but nonetheless, being that serious students of genetics are reaching these points, we would have to at least treat it as plausible. So as you watch this and you hear me say samples, instead of thinking samples, think plausible origin points for different clades downstream from E1B1A. And once you look at the map like that and see that it's plausible that a bunch of clades originated to the east and to the west and to the south and to the north of the Levant, we would have to think that ancient E1B1A carriers also went through the Levant, being that they're plausibly all around it in antiquity. So the argument, the general argument, still stands despite that premise, if that makes sense.
100%.
All right. And then I've got to jump off, but I'm looking forward to the discussion. All right. God bless.
Peace and blessings, Abu.
Peace and blessings. Fair use.
Share my reasoning, but I've never got around to it. However, today someone asked me in a public Facebook thread if I think samples of E1B1A dating to before 70 AD will be found in the Levant. So it seemed to me like now would be an auspicious time to go ahead with that video idea. And here we are. So as I explained in that thread, as well as in previous Facebook threads, I think one easy illustration of this likelihood can be pulled up when using the map tab on the SNP tracker over at Scaled Innovation, the Scaled Innovation website. And I'll share a link to this tool in the video description. Now, when you're on this page, you simply put in E-V38 in the search at the top of the screen. Then make sure the gender icon is set to male and click go. And at that point, you get this map, which provides a speculative origin point for EV38. And once you have that, you go to the top of the page and click these three bars on the right. And when you do that, you'll get this drop-down menu, at which point you'll want to click on the Show Descendants option. Once you do that, the map then plots where different downstream subclades of E1B1A have been found. And honestly, it makes for quite the spectrum, right? Because it shows that ancient samples of subclades of E1B1A have been found all over the place, rather than being restricted to just West Africa, samples have been found in Europe, in Northeast Africa, and in parts of West Asia, both, which are both southeast and northeast of the Levant. In short, samples of subclades of E1B1A have been found at various points on opposite sides of the Levant. In a sense, they collectively surround the Levant. And while it's possible that E1B1A carriers went around the Levant, somehow circumvented the Levant when traveling to those different points, I honestly think it's more likely that E1B1A carriers being on opposite sides of the Levant entails that those E1B1A carriers moved through the Levant. Honestly, it's a plausible, even probable route from one point to another. And that's why I think this is a good illustration of why it's likely that eventually ancient samples of E1B1A will be found in the Levant. And when I shared this line of reasoning with the person who asked me the question, he replied that if even one sample of E1B1A is found in the Levant, he'll proclaim the quote-unquote BHIs to be true Israelites. And I felt that that was worth documenting, as this is an example, perhaps a rather glaring example of, a moment when hasty reasoning, which was tacit, becomes explicit. Now, if a sample is found, at that point, this person might have egg on his face, and only then he might trot out, what will seem like post hoc objections. For example, he might object that just because the haplogroup is found in the Levant, that doesn't mean it was Jacob's haplogroup, right? And, for example, I would actually agree with that because, for example, there are ancient samples of E1B1B, J1, J2, and R, which have been found in the ancient Levant. There was even a sample of Q, which was found in what's now Lebanon. And, so honestly, it would seem wiser to raise such points rather than put forth the sort of confident gamble that you see on your screen. If these sorts of points are only raised after a sample of E1B1A is found, at that point, it's going to seem awkward. Like I alluded to a moment ago, it's going to seem post hoc. Now, on a closing note, I would ask that everyone keep in mind that there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who either resided in or moved through the ancient Levant. Therefore, the dozens of samples which we currently have only represent a small fragment of that spectrum. And for that reason, we should take it for granted that our collection of samples and with it our understanding of the ancient Levant is going to expand, evolve, and diversify. Food for thought. And on that note, I'll close this video here. As always, I welcome any comments, questions, or criticisms. I don't censor anyone here, so feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative. And on that note, God bless.
Yeah, and to support that even more so, something that Yap talks about quite a bit is a particular paper where it talks about modern Jews having ancient DNA of ancient sub-Saharan African DNA consistent with the Yoruba and Luya populations that potentially go back 3,400 years ago, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna just step away for a minute. Just go ahead. Y'all can go ahead.
You got it. And so in that presentation I was doing, I actually do a haplogroup comparison between the Yoruba and the Luhya and whatnot, right? To see like, okay, what potential haplogroups could have been part of that migration into the Jewish population there. Because if we're going back that 3,400 years to that potential 3,400 years, with the average that they give, going back 72 generations and whatnot, that potentially puts that admixture at the founding population of the nation of Israel with that mixed multitude concept, right? And so amongst the Luya and the Yoruba, you find E1B1A, but not only that, you find common subclades of E1B1A amongst them, right? So it's very, very possible that E1B1A was part of the mixed multitude and in Levant at some point in time.
Yeah, and with that study, I know people are trying to use, there's a certain part in that study that speaks on, well, the geneticists made clear what they was doing was try to make it clear that they understood that there could be some other reasons, especially for the Southern Europeans, those that they had scaled on the map that had sub-Saharan African DNA, could have came, through Rome, merchants, this, that, and the third, but it went right back and made it clear that they were talking about, older the eight different sects of Jewish, the eight Jewish sects that had sub-Saharan African admixture was significantly older, going back to about 14 or 1500 BCE.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to touch on some the Ruddy Brew had said. Like, he said that it was African Hebrews that had migrated into the Levant with E and whatnot, right? And so more so what we see is like an east to west migration of E and whatnot, right? So we're going to get into this on the presentation I break down, because like migrations with the haplogroups is a major part of understanding this thing and whatnot, right? And something Yap's been trying to focus on quite a bit is focusing on like, again, we recently just talked about a paper that was dealing with migrations into the Western Sahel and whatnot. And with something we talk about periods, like, again, who's coming in, when, and where, right? That's an important profile to understand. A lot of people, this is where a lot of people are getting wrong on a lot of stuff, is they're making their assumptions, not understanding who's moving around when and where. And I think if we clear that up, we can clear up a lot of the mistakes being made and the assumptions being made, because people are, again, I'm not mad at people for making assumptions, right? But a lot of us got to recognize that we're making assumptions and we're moving as if the assumptions are fact, and we're not doing the scholastic work of trying to disprove our own positions while trying to prove our own position, if that makes sense. Abu said, agree with Moore. Khan proposed E carriers carrying Neanderthal DNA is evidence of a back migration from West Asia. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, because you could only pick that up through sex. So which means you had to be in close proximity to Eurasians in order to pick that up. In order for that to be in your DNA, in your body, you know, there had to be some physical contact. So that's definitely proof.
That's the part people always want to just pretend doesn't exist, though, G. And shout out to Yeshua for always pounding the table for this one and always pounding this one home. It's like, you don't get the admixture without the admixture, fam. Like, we have we see the admixture. Therefore, there was an admixture event, i.e., two different groups of people got together and said, hey, you understand?
Yeah, they started doing the thing.
They started making it happen, Captain.
Yeah, so.
That's why this whole pure blood conversation, it's crazy, and it typically comes from the people who have the most, like, a crazy amount of admixture themselves. Like, it's always it's the funniest thing. We see this argument coming from people that have different haplogroups. Again, Riapa's gone through like a haplogroup tree of different so-called quote unquote Israelite leaders that are out there, right? And to the last one, we ain't found one with the same haplogroup yet.
I mean, to show an example of how people were mixing, I mean, we can go back to the Pleistocene or after the Pleistocene, or you know, the last Green Sahara, or prior to it, the last glacial maximum, right? And we have the Tufians, right, or the first farmers. Let's just say the first farmers were a mix of Natufian and Zagros Mountain hunter-gatherers, and Anatolian hunter-gatherer DNA, which means that these people were mixing 13,000 years ago. You know, the only way that they can find this admixture in the Natufians or in Zagros Mountain peoples or populations is for them to have mixed, have sex, and pass these genes along.
And that's another thing, is we're finding out the more we're looking at these studies, and again, there's a mountain of studies coming out about Africa now, which is fantastic. We're finding out that these admixtures were happening older than what we thought, right? Like, it's blowing my mind, going back way farther than what we thought. Eurasian DNA coming in way earlier than when I thought it was coming into West Africa, right? It was in North Africa. I knew it was in North Africa for a minute, but like West Africa, I'm tripping and whatnot, right? I'm finding out that we're having like we're having in the Western Sahel. It's blowing my mind, because with the haplogroup breakdown, we literally have the same haplogroup mix over there as we have over here. We're right down to I, G, all that, right? RM269 descendants, all that, right?
Hold on, Mo. I'm sorry. I'm going to step away from it. I'm sorry.
No, you got it. Try to keep it from being dead right quick. What was I going to say? I missed my point. But I will say this though, I see the video on the screen, and it's about to get super interesting and whatnot. But this is why it becomes important to understand the who, what, where, when, and why, because there's nothing wrong with having different haplogroups and whatnot, right? Like, so Yap's not somebody, we don't demarcate anybody, we don't trip out, like, so we made a lot of videos about Alizar and whatnot because he's R1B and whatnot. Right? We're not tripping on people being R1B. There's people in Yap that are R1B, right? We got at Alizar because Alizar is preaching this thing to where it's a purity concept and a hierarchy concept based upon the bloodline and whatnot. And he's not the majority. He doesn't share the same descendancy of the majority of the people that follow him, right? It's important to clear this stuff up because there's a lot of people in this day and time that are making very serious decisions about their life, about what they do with their energy, money, time, all that kind of stuff based upon these beliefs people are teaching and whatnot. And a lot of these beliefs are based on pie in the sky concepts that don't shake out when you actually try to prove them out and whatnot, right? And that's important because there's a lot of sincere people in this thing that are being led in wrong directions, being ignorantly sincere and whatnot, right? So it's going to be super important to clear up these migration patterns and these haplogroups that go along with these migration patterns in the who and the when, right? That when is going to be super important. Because when we get clear about this picture, about the who, what, where, when, and why, we can answer that question. Well, so people like Dr. Bantu, shout out to him, he agrees. 4 groups of people coming off the slave ship, right? People who were Muslims, Christians, Jews, and people practicing African spiritual traditions, right? The question is, can we shake out what the percentages on all that, right? And I think there's ways we can do that. And the clearer we make that picture, the harder it is for people to make pseudo arguments going forward. Is anyone else here? Ooh, I gotta keep it running then. Okay. No dead air on Moor's watch. So this was an important part of the conversation that me and Ebri were talking about last time we were on when Garfield jumped on. And shout out to Garfield. If you want to see my response to what he had to say, I put it up on my channel the other day. But in terms of the genetics, people like shout out to the conscious community, because this is what I was, or not conscious community, the urban apologists. This is what I was going to say, what I forgot. Because over time, I've been around long enough for when they were challenging people on genetics, like prove you're a Hebrew, prove you're an Israelite, blah blah, whoop-de-woo, genetics and DNA, etc. And they were making some really bad arguments that slowly changed over time because people, and shout out to the brethren, we're putting out we're trying to put out different arguments that were more scholastically based and whatnot. And so slowly over time, we're seeing the urban apologists saying some and not all, right? And I so appreciate that, right? Because once we can recognize, like what Vince Bantu was saying, that like we're again a mixed multitude coming off that slave ship, and that's some, and it's not going to be a lot of people, but some got connection to the Jews in West Africa, whatnot, right? Like direct connection. That's a big thing to understand. Hopefully, we can get the Afrocentrist on that one coming up soon and whatnot. And hopefully, Garfield can see the error of his ways and whatnot, and come on home and recognize, yeah, we were a mixed multitude in West Africa, we're a mixed multitude over here, and we need to respect the different groups of people, all of them that came over, West Africa, East Africa, all that. Again, the Muslims, the Christians, the Jews, the people practicing African spiritual traditions. We can't rewrite their histories just to make our narrative to fit our narratives. That's not fair to do to them, and that's not fair to do to their descendants.
Makes perfect sense. Let me fair use.
There you go.
I want to discuss a minor controversy which has been unfolding in different corners of social media, and it centers on this question: what is Divine Prospect's haplogroup? Now, as a disclaimer, this video is not intended disrespectfully towards Divine Prospect, but because there has been some talk about what was said and what hasn't been said, it seemed worthwhile to put together a quick repository which gathers the different clips which have been appearing over the last year. Now, before we get into that, however, let me first say that
I'm going to be discussing Divine Prospect's haplogroup, so he's within his rights to ask what my haplogroup might be. So let me be clear up front and state that as per 23andMe, my haplogroup is RP311, which is a downstream subclade of RM269, which itself falls under R1b. And I fully acknowledge that if anyone wants to discuss Divine Prospect's haplogroup, he is within his rights to ask them about their own haplogroups. Now, another thing I want to say is that I'm tempted to start making bumper stickers which read, "It's okay to have haplogroup R." And I say this because if it turned out that Divine Prospect had haplogroup R, as you might expect, I personally would not think anything negative about that. After all, I'm an R carrier myself. However, because Divine Prospect is part of the Israelite spectrum, haplogroups can become a contentious issue. And even though perhaps 1 in every 7 African Americans has haplogroup R, it nonetheless can be a point of controversy for those who hold to a patrilineal definition of Israelite. Now, personally, I think it shouldn't be controversial, but because of the swirl of debates about patrilineal descent and who's authentic and who's not authentic, haplogroups have become a point of controversy. And I fear that that controversy might make some people crazy, or at least make some people uncomfortable, or inspire them to take less than forthright stances. But just to be clear, if you have haplogroup R, me personally, I'm not judging you. In fact, I might say you're my cousin. But whatever the case, jumping right into the different clips, I first saw this come up on the Brother Garfield podcast back in July of 2022, and I'll share links to all the sources in the video description. Now, at this point, multiple people were under the impression that Divine Prospect had haplogroup R, some saying that they had heard that directly from him. Here's the clip.
Hey, what's going on?
What's happening?
What's happening? I just wanted to just drop a bomb as well, since y'all hating on the R marker.
Oh yeah, we know you Western European too, Kyle. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm straight up. Now, a Divine Prospect also is R, so I didn't want to throw that out there.
Yeah, we know that.
Hey, real quick, to be fair.
Yeah, but he's trying to say he's T now. I got the
that's what I'm saying. Like, he was on Clubhouse
saying he's T now.
Yeah, on Clubhouse, he was in the room. We were talking about DNA, and he said he's haplogroup T. So now, real quick, Kyle, so we can have you on record about this. Now, did you physically see his DNA results, or did he just tell you, or did you, like, you know what I'm saying? Because he's saying that his DNA results were haplogroup T.
Nah, so like me, I didn't physically see his results. He told me out of his mouth the results, and I think he actually, we had a group chat a while back when I was a Hebrew Israelite. This is where we had a lot of contention, because he let us know in our group that what his DNA marker was. It was R1, whatever it is, right? But he was trying to trace himself back to the people of Gabon. And that's how he said that he was an Israelite. And that's how me and him kind of fell out. I'm like, bro, how the fuck is you teaching this? And everybody teaching got E1, B1A. But yeah, so I don't know if I can look at my Facebook messages if I still have those messages, but I never saw his DNA results in my face. But I got a
Kyle.
Yo, what up?
What did they say your boy? What did they say his Y marker was?
Who's that?
Your boy Ron. What did they say, or what did he say? What did you say about him?
He said it was R1 something, but whatever the people that live in the Gabon people, because there's some Jews that converted that was in Gabon, the Gabon tribe, whatever, and he traced it, he claimed lineage from those people. That's how he was able.
You talking about Ron Dalton, or you talking about a different Ron?
Yeah, Ron Shields.
Ron Shields. Okay, my bad, bro.
Yeah.
I know if he was still. Yeah, I thought y'all. Okay, so you saying that Divine Prospect basically said he was R, because he's on Clubhouse now saying he's haplogroup T. So
I don't know about that, bro, because like we had a whole group about this, like a group discussion, and we were like, that's why.
Yeah, I got a screenshot now, real quick. I got a screenshot of Divine literally saying he's haplogroup T now. You know what I'm saying? Like I showed 93.
I mean, you might have said it, bro.
I'm just saying he could be lying. I'm just saying, like, he could be lying about T, but I'm just, that's why I was asking.
And just to supplement that, Faithful to God recently discussed this on Clubhouse. And here's a brief clip in that regard.
So Divine Prospect claimed to Kyle, who is formerly associated with Kingdom Harbinger Ministries, he told Kyle that he was R1B. All right. He's not the only one that said this. I'm going to put his name out there because he gave me permission. Ngozi verified that Divine Prospect was R1B because he shared it in a live stream. Ngozi said that he was a part of a live stream in the chat Divine Prospect was trying to cast aspersions on DNA, and he said in the live stream that he was R1B. So two people, independent of each other, are saying that Divine Prospect said that he was R1B, right, paternally. Are you gentlemen at all aware, because since you guys run in Hebrew Israelite circles, are you guys aware of Divine having said in the past that he was R1B?
Yeah, for me, it's here. I heard it from Ngozi, but yeah, it's hearsay for me.
Yeah, so exactly. So you guys heard it essentially from the same person that I heard it from.
Now, in those clips, you heard the Hebrew of Israel described such as hearsay because it was coming in secondhand. And with that in mind, on your screen is a screenshot from a live chat on Clubhouse, which took place on July 3rd, 2022. And as you see here, Divine Prospect will quote, "On my mom's side, I have Sephardim T haplogroup markers," end quote. Now, admittedly, he was saying this is apparently on his maternal side, and he said on his mom's side. In a subsequent comment, he reiterated that he had haplogroup T, and then shortly thereafter, he repeated that statement again. And then he shared this link to an article which he felt supported his claim to Sephardic ancestry. And it was a 2012 article in the European Journal of Human Genetics titled Sephardic Signature and Haplogroup T Mitochondrial DNA. And note that the reference is to mitochondrial DNA. So this is referring to a maternal haplogroup. In short, Divine Prospect was claiming to have haplogroup T on his maternal side. Now, fast forward to December of 2022, Faithful to God found himself in the same clubhouse room as Divine Prospect, and as Faithful wanted some clarity regarding Divine Prospect's haplogroup claims, he decided to ask him directly. Unfortunately, replays were apparently not on for that discussion, but appreciating the significance of the exchange, a screen recording was taken while the discussion was going on live. And as you see at the top, Faithful wrote the following to Divine Prospect, quote, "I recall you mentioning that you were haplogroup T in a room with Jewish folks. But a former member of Kingdom Harbinger Ministries, Chayel, said you were one of the R's. Could you clarify for me what paternal haplogroup you are?" End quote. And note that the question was about his paternal haplogroup. Then they have a bit of back and forth about Chayel, and then Faithful attempts to ask again, quote, "Are you haplogroup T paternally?" End quote. Divine Prospect responded, "Yes, I have some haplogroup T markers, but it's not dominant." End quote. A bit incredulous at that answer, Faithful writes back, quote, "Wait, so you have some haplogroup T markers, plural? I'm asking about the Y chromosome, which is singular," end quote. And then Faithful asks, quote, "So is your paternal marker singular T and not R?" End quote. Divine Prospect responded, quote, "I meant marker singular. As you can see, I'm typing fast since I cannot speak on stage at the moment," end quote. Then he added, quote, "I took a DNA test back in 2012, end quote. So he took a DNA test and apparently his paternal haplogroup was T. That's the implication that I'm getting from that discussion. Okay, with that, we can now come to the final clip in this brief video, which is from a discussion on Clubhouse just last month. As you listen to this clip, note that Divine Prospect claims his haplogroup, his paternal haplogroup, is E1B1B. And note that he gives the impression that he doesn't know his maternal haplogroup, and he also seems to give the impression that he may not have taken a DNA test, as he apparently has to rely on his parents' results to know what his haplogroups are. Here's the clip.
You can see these markers going back further than that period in the 16th century, correct? You would agree. We can do that, right?
With DNA
so the question is the markers would have to go back further than that.
Hold on, Divine. Somebody was trying to come in and say something?
Yeah, I think it was 9. He said, what are those markers?
Because autosomal DNA may go back some
even farther,
years.
Correct.
I'm
talking about paternal and maternal.
Direct paternal lineage.
Y DNA and the mitochondria DNA, right?
Right.
So mtDNA on the mother's side through my grandmother, and paternal Y DNA through my granduncle.
And what are those?
Through his side.
What are those? What are yours?
I gotta ask my mother for it. It's been some time since I looked at it, but we can have a discussion about it, and I can
show
your
it paternal?
to you, and we can have the conversation.
Paternal.
On my father's side.
Yes.
My father's side, because we talking about my mother's side.
The clubhouse.
I'm just asking. From your father's side. What about your father's side?
Side has a mixture of Nigerian from the DNA.
We're talking about markers.
Oh, E1B1B. Mm-hmm.
Oh, you E1B1B?
Yeah, from East Africa. No, on my dad's side, he had some of that from East Africa.
So you did a 23andMe?
He did it. I don't know. I gotta ask him. He just sent the data to me. Yeah, and the data is.
So, having seen that, I'd like to give this basic summary of the clips and as well as the screenshots, which we've seen here. First, prior to July of 2022, multiple people were saying that Divine Prospect told them his paternal haplogroup fell under R. Second, in July of 2022, Divine Prospect insinuated that his maternal haplogroup was T. Third, in December of 2022, Divine Prospect said his paternal haplogroup was T, or at least he gave the impression that his paternal haplogroup was T. Fourth, in July of 2023, Divine Prospect said that his paternal haplogroup was E1B1B. He insinuated that he did not know his maternal haplogroup, and he gave the impression that he might not have taken a DNA test as he had to rely on his parents' results. At the very least, this can leave one feeling confused. Now, it's my hope that Divine Prospect might clarify what the actual fact of the matter is, but of course, if he prefers to not discuss such things, that's his right. As I said at the outset, this video was not intended to cast aspersions on Divine Prospect, but as different folks were discussing this, it seemed prudent and worthwhile to bring together the different elements in this discussion, which have sort of been scattered over, across multiple platforms over the course of a year or more. But on that note, I'll close the short video here. As always, I look forward to any questions, comments, or criticisms that anyone might have. So feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative, because I don't censor anyone here. And
that was a classic. What are y'all thoughts on that new information, whatnot?
Yeah, that's a classic, bro. Like that one hurt when I saw that one. When I saw Faithful first play that video, him going back and forth with Divine, I was like, oh, that hurts. Like, and then when I heard 93 going back and forth with him and Garfield, I was like, oh, that hurts even more because again at Yap we had heard the same thing, that he was R&B, and then Faithful put out his information. It was like, yeah, that's not how this works. You don't have like, so like OG, like what Sean Harris was talking about earlier, is like you don't see like a Yap becoming a non-Yap. Like so R1B isn't Yap, T isn't Yap, you know what I'm saying, and E1B1B is Yap, right? And to be clear, like what was interesting about that, he said he had E1B1E from East Africa, like his father had lineage from East Africa. So I thought that one was super interesting. That might be true. He also might be T. There's lineage, you got that in East Africa too. You find that in parts of West Africa with the Fulani, etc. Right? Even the Limba have T, right? But to say that your R1B, T and E1B1B, that's not how this works in any way, shape, or form. You want to touch on that, OG?
Yeah, I just got back. I missed most of that, but I'm reading this here.
Yeah, this was the video where Abu went over Faithful talking about how Divine Prospect was claiming that he was R1B and then also T and then also E1B1B over time.
Yeah, so we do find T, amongst Jews. R1B, we find that amongst Jews too. But yeah, I'm not going to really speak too much on that because I just walked back. I just put the headset on. So we'll go forward from here.
And, one last classic one we gotta go back over. The Yap Gang featuring this. Ashkenazim and Autosomal DNAs by Eric Hike, An Ancient DNA Origin. This is with the good doctor. Abu, Moor, Sean, what y'all seen with Israelites that deal with DNA? I've seen a pattern that either they start and they drop out because it's going in their favor, or it's just regurgitating the same things.
No, that's facts. I would have to agree with it.
Yeah, it's it's a very heavy read. You can't just pick up one study and try to use it to be your end all be all. That's like surface researching. It's it's heavy reading. One study leads to another, supplementals. Like it's a lot of reading. It even leads you into textbooks. We bought textbooks. Each one of us have bought different textbooks. So yeah, and one of the brothers asked Russell Higgins, how many of the DNA brothers work at a DNA lab? or have he says a master's degree in the field. You don't need a degree to have an understanding of the science. You just have to read the studies, the actual studies that the geneticists put out. Once you get a handle of them, you get a good handle on all of them, or as many as possible. You start to see who's pseudo, who agrees with who's an outlier. Like Aaron Elhike, around Elhike. You know what I'm saying? You start to understand. You start to see where the flaws are in their methodology. So it doesn't take. You don't have to be a rocket science to figure this out. You guys are reading the Bible every day, and using it, for to make arguments. Nobody's sitting here telling you, do you have a theological degree and all of this, So I think that question is unfair.
Yeah, when OG says reading these scientific studies and all that kind of stuff and going through it, like, it means like doing it honestly, right? Like we go slow enough to stop when we don't understand something and find out what they're trying to say and whatnot in these studies, right? Because they're saying, like, they're in this scholastic world and scientific arena, like, they're using very particular language to say very particular things and whatnot, right? It's not it's we see people like scratching the surface on this stuff, and they're trying to pseudo up the thing like they do with like the history books and whatnot, and they find out that they can't really do it, right? Because it gets real tough for them. It's not as simple to pseudo up this thing and whatnot, right? And so that's why we come through and smash the nonsense up and whatnot. And again, like you said, it's like people, like, either people stop dealing with it or they just start regurgitating nonsense.
Most of the time, they just walk away from it because, like Moore said, it's hard. It's hard to pseudo it up. The science is the science. You can't pseudo it up, especially if we get a hold of it and we show you. We do a presentation and show you where the flaws at. Usually we don't hear back from those people.
Because you want to try using studies like who's that Jewish guy that tries to say that Jews are Khazars and all that kind of stuff? That even backfires on them. The considering hypothesis, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So it's a double-edged sword. It doesn't just hurt Hebrew Israelites. It hurts, anybody who's dealing with it. Jews. It could cut you. You could use it. You wield it, and it cuts you. You might strike a blow, but your hands are getting bloody at the same time from your own blood. So you have to be very honest with it, and that's the approach we take. We try to be honest with it and not go to we try not to go and fall into the category of being pseudo, because then you're being dishonest with the science. You have to be honest. You have to be where they show the positives, you have to accept the positive as well as the negative. So that's the best way I could describe it.
And if you get something wrong, come out and say you got something wrong. We do it all the time. We got streams all the time. Like, I was wrong about that. I was wrong about this. I was wrong about that. I should have presented this. I should have presented that. Because we tried our best not to talk past what we can prove and talk past what we know. But a lot of people aren't willing to do that step with accountability right there. They'll say some nonsense. And since they put out in public, now they got to throw good money after bad. And we got to make these conversations a thing about scholarship and integrity, fam, and methodology and whatnot. Because without integrity, what's the point of the conversation? It's not in good faith.
And they got so much riding on their presuppositions, money, fan base. Some of these people have thousands and thousands of viewers, viewerships, people, giving them cash apps, and they're selling books, and they're doing all kind of stuff. So it hurts their bottom line. So they ignore the science. Once they see they can't use it anymore, they ignore it and they go back into their whole pseudo doctrine. So it's a whole lot of dishonest characters running around, I should say.
Yeah, because once, and then also if you preach the whole doctrine that Israel can only teach Israel, the Gentiles can't teach, and it comes to find out you're in a class as a Gentile, then what do?
Yeah, you're kind of stuck now. You better hope that what people are saying outside of your particular doctrine, that salvation is for everybody, and that Gentiles are not going to be slaves, because you might end up being a Gentile. So you have to be very careful. You better hope that what everybody's saying about salvation is correct. Those who say salvation is for everyone, because you might fall into the category, of an outlier, regardless to what your skin tone is, and then you're going to see somebody in the kingdom who looks just like a European, but they actually descend, according to your doctrine, that being that they descend from, from Jacob, they're going to have a higher office or a higher seating than you.
Real talk, there's like a good handful of prophets in the Old Testament I can't give you lineage for, like, at all. How do you know that they're not Gentiles? How do you know that they don't come from sojourners or whatnot? You don't.
Like
you got major prophets that people argue over. Can you give me a direct lineage for Elijah? He's called a Tishbite. He's called an inhabitant. You understand what I'm saying? Like, anyway.
And I see NHITs in the comment section. I don't know if it's Brother Barack. I don't know if you have time, because this is starting to come up with the DNA discussions. Brother, I don't know what haplogroup y'all hold to or what you teach, but Berean, if you can drop the link, the brother got some time. These are some of the more subject matter experts on DNA with the app. Brother Sean and Orthodox Moor.
Yeah, I believe Ibri went on to talk with one of them, because they had like Ibri doesn't mind me saying it now, like they had haplogroup EP2 or whatnot, which is the precursor to E1B1A, E1B1B or whatnot. And so he had a conversation with him about that. So I don't know if they hold to that haplogroup concept, but like everyone got to be EP2. But yeah, the brother had asked him if what would things look like for him being EP2, and Ibri was like, well, it looks a little bit different than everyone else, because it is. It's not a common haplogroup amongst African American at all.
Yeah, the brother might have to do a big Y,
mm-hmm.
A family tree, so we could get a terminal snippet, and we'll be able to see better. What. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I thought I could. Go ahead. You got to finish.
No. I'm good. I just want to say, yeah, the brother just has to do a big Y. It's kind of expensive, but it'll help him. It will really help him out.
Yeah, and if he's legit EP2, I mean, he's a whole bunch of folk granddaddy in his piece. All right.
Facts. Great grandpappy.
You heard?
Okay, it's on your channel. What's the name of the video, so we can pull it up? Because I think I think you brothers are in tune with talking about NSRT with Remy Iona. So, more shot. What's some of the issues with Remy Iona's toss with DNA?
Ooh.
Because the Rabbi Damona, his toss, I think there's misunderstandings internally with the Pekdeen.
The Sakdeen, the Pekdeen.
Sakdeen,
yeah. So this is a big issue, right? Because with the ruling of the Sakdeen and the Pekdeen and whatnot about recognizing the evils being Jews or whatnot, one of the things they cite in their ruling is a genetic connection to the Levant or whatnot. And so when you ask Rabbi Damota about so where'd you get the genetic information? He says, well, you go talk to Remy Lona or whatnot. And when you talk to Remy Lona, he says, well, go talk to Rabbi Damota. I'm like, well, that's a problem, right? But when you get into to Remy Lona's book where he talks about this, because that's what Rabbi Damota was talking about. Remy claims stuff like that the Yoruba are Hamites and that the Igbo are Israelites, and that the Igbo are more connected to the Fulani and the Hausa in northern Nigeria than they are to the Yoruba and whatnot, right? Now, when you sit and look at their haplogroups, this is false. Like the Yoruba and the Igbo have similar haplogroups. And again, they would like the same E1B1As that they connect to with the Igbo connect to with the Fulani, they also connect to with the Yoruba. And what's also funny is if the Igbo are saying they're connected to the house in the house up north or whatnot, then so are the Fulani, so are the the Europe, because they all three of those groups carry R1B V88 or whatnot, right? Which is a Eurasian back migration through Africa. If the Igbo don't carry it, but the Yoruba in the house of Fulani do, right? So the way he connects people, it doesn't quite make sense. So if the Yoruba are Hamites, but they're Israelites, that doesn't shake out genetically, because they both share majoritively the same haplogroup types, right?
Yeah, it's tribalism.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. One thing about me, it doesn't make a difference on my DNA. I still believe and practice salvation for me regardless. I'm with you. But this does go into discussion about prophecy, and when folks say replacement theology, when folks say you don't know who the people are because of this and that. So y'all knows in the background. But let me let this play, please.
Hey, shout out to the brother, because he said he took a second test. He's just waiting on his results, man. Get at us.
Oh, that's beautiful. Get at us, bro. As soon as you get it, come over to the channel, or just email us at Yap Gang, or email Avery, and
we'll go back over there and go through it if you want us to.
Yeah, we'll come on your channel and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fair use.
Back on December 1st of 2022, I put out two videos. The first one was titled DNA Methodology, Boom Church and Ancient DNA Origins. And the second one was titled More Curious Screenshots. And the general theme of those videos was that Will Brown had made some allusions to the results that he got on Eran el-Hayek's Ancient DNA Origins platform. And I felt that those allusions were potentially misleading, though not necessarily intentionally so. Now, however, Yeshub from the Genesis 49ers channel had taken the same test that Will Brown had taken with Eran el-Hayek's platform, and I took it for granted that Yeshub's results would allow us to infer how Will Brown's results likely looked, because I felt that they would roughly mirror each other. And shortly thereafter, Will Brown wound up being completely open and transparent with his results, and they wound up confirming that assumption that I mentioned, that that his results would mirror Yeshub's results. And I wound up covering that in a video on December 3rd, titled Genetic Proximity to Ancient Israel. Now, I mentioned those past videos because today I want to take a similar approach to a show which aired on Benaya Israel's channel titled Ashkenazi DNA Discussion with Dr. Eran el-Hayek and Dr. Kelly Richardson. And in that video, neither Benaya nor Kelly showed their results from el-Hayek's website, but Kelly made a vague passing reference to his results. So similar to those videos from last December, here too, I'm going to again look at what Yeshub has publicly shared, and I'm going to attempt to use that to infer what Kelly and perhaps so too Benaya's results probably look like. So jumping right in, I'm going to play 3 brief clips from this show. And in the first clip, you can hear Benaya Israel endorsing Eran el-Hayek's approach, no longer holding to a patrilineal definition of Israelite. Benaya is now explicitly challenging Ashkenazim to meet some unspecified genetic proximity to Palestinians. And he's doing this because el-Hayek's position is that while Ashkenazim might be closer to Palestinians than, say, the average Englishman might be, they are still significantly different from Palestinians and from ancient Levantine samples, and more like populations in the Caucasus, for example. And so this first clip will run for a little less than a minute and a half, and you can see Benaya echoing some of el-Hayek's approach. And fair use.
At the end of the day, if there's some contention as to where, like for instance, where the Jewish people come from, if they want to, validate, their belonging to, that land, validate them being, Israelites or whatnot. The easiest way to do it, is just to do a simple genetic distance test. Like, that's it. Like, you don't have to, climb onto the top of Mount Everest. You don't need to do some super, some super complex computation. I would say, I guess my challenge, to those that would, that would want to argue to say that of course, like the Ashkenazi are in fact the original indigenous population of Israel. I would just simply say, then simply compare your DNA to the group or the that's in Georgia, in Russia, Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. And just see if it's close. Is it closer to to Russia, Georgia, or is it closer to the to the Palestinians?
Yes.
Okay, so having seen that, the immediate question should become, if one is going to subject Ashkenazim and other Israelite claimants to these genetic distance tests, what might be the right tool for the job? So in this next clip, Benaiah seems to clearly endorse al-Hayek's site as the appropriate tool for that task. So again, fair use.
Okay. So this is another game changer in that you're able to check or compare your DNA to to some of the ancient DNA that's extracted from the archaeological sites from I guess various places in Israel.
So at this point, if Benaiah and perhaps tacitly Kelly are challenging Ashkenazim and other Israelite claimants to check their distances on al-Hayek's platform, that raises an important question. And that question is, what sorts of results did Benaiah and Kelly get on that platform? You see, both gentlemen apparently purchased the full bundle package, which enables them to access all the kits on that site, but neither of them have shown their results. However, in this next clip, Kelly makes a vague allusion to getting 15% on the Tribe of Levi kit. Here, listen to this. And again, fair use.
And I appreciate it. And to Benaiah's point, I went to your site, the Ancient DNA Origins, and I actually purchased the entire package for, to get everything, all the results. And I did see, and I know it's going through some upgrades and changes along the way, but I did see, for example, a connection, for example, to the Levites. And, can you, kind of share a little more information on that? Because I did see the Levites, and I know early on I saw some of the other tribes, but, some of them kind of disappeared, but the Levites are there. So can you shed some light on that?
Absolutely. So first, you didn't disclose what similarity you had, and I respect that. It's your results. I can only share that some members of the community emailed me, and they said they have 20% Levite.
Yeah, I think mine was 15%.
Now, as you heard al-Hayek point out, Kelly didn't actually show his results. And as for getting 15%, a question needs to be asked. Did he mean that he got 15% in the Israelite section of the general categories? Or does he mean that he scored 15% against an individual sample within the relevant kit? Right now, to explain this distinction, I'd like to turn to a show which aired on the Genesis 49ers channel just yesterday, just last night. You see, Yeshub purchased the Tribe of Levi kit, the same kit in which Kelly said he got 15% of something. So here's Yeshub showing his results.
Right. All right, my results. Drum roll, please. Let's see. I'm still 99.2%.
Okay, I just want to pause this briefly to point out that Yeshub got listed by al-Hayek's site as 0% Israelite in the general categories. Kelly's cousin, Will Brown, got the same result on al-Hayek's site. And I have to wonder if Kelly and even Benaiah likewise got that result. But whatever the case, let's now continue with this video clip and look at what Yeshub got when compared to individual samples.
What was it supposed to do again? Oh, there we go. Down here. I forgot this part. Okay. Genetic similarity to the tribes of Israel, Levi. So I guess this is what they're raving about here. Hophni. 14% genetic similarity. Pesha, Aviva, Bakka, Harun, Sered, Adah. See, genetic similarity to the tribes of Levi. The left chart shows in black your highest genetic similarity to the ancient individuals in the test, and your average genetic similarity to all the individuals in the test.
Hey, so Boo, this is probably what Kelly was talking about. He had a 15% connection or something. It's probably on this part here.
Yeah. So Kelly, if you're watching, what is that 86% of? Who are those people in the 86th percentile region here?
Okay, so as was alluded to by Orthodox Moor, there is an important distinction here. You can get listed as 0% Israelite in the general categories and yet still have some higher percentage connection with an individual sample within a given kit. So saying someone got 15% of something in one of El Hayek's tribal kits does not in itself tell us how one measures against El Hayek's Israelite ideal. Now, of course, some might wish to ask, how is it possible for one to be listed as 0% Israelite, yet somehow have 14 or 15% similarity with an individual sample within an Israelite tribal kit? And to answer that question, let's look at when Yeshub showed the data on the individual sample that he matched with, or the individual sample which he had the highest percentage match with.
What was the one that matched up? So that was the closest to again. What was the name of her? Hophni.
Yeah, Hophni. Yeah.
H. Oh, haplogroup. This is a male.
Oh,
Y
wow.
haplogroup T2.
Yo, they basically saying Levi is a whole haplogroup T in this piece, man.
So why does it say Neolithic Southeast African at 32%?
Okay, so pausing that here, what's significant about what you see on your screen is that the samples also have complex admixtures, right? They're not simply listed as just 100% Israelite. So because a given sample can be listed as having some other type of admixture, you can actually connect to an individual sample through that other admixture. And that is how one is able to get a partial match with an individual sample in an Israelite kit, even when the platform lists you as 0% Israelite. Now, before I close this video, I want to note one other important detail. You see, aside from the option to view your own results, El Hayek's platform also has an option which reads View Population-Wide Results, which enables you to see how your percentage matches against other modern populations. And you can even compare your percentage to the roughly typical percentage arrived at by Ashkenazim. So let's take a look at when Yeshub showed that section.
Hey, did they go to this part right here? Hold on, the worldwide results or whatever, population-wide results.
They may have. I didn't see them.
So I'm about 15% or 14% similar to that one individual. A Bedouin from Israel is 48% similar. From a Jordanian is 47% similar, and a Palestinian is 46% similar. See Turkey? Yeah, I expect Turkey to be high too. Yeah, Druze, Turkey, Ashkenazi, Jew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the it's right here. 39% is higher than my percentage, so therefore they are more Jew or Israelite than I could ever be.
Yo.
See, y'all never fair and across the board with this shit. Y'all always come up with these ideas like, oh, well, this proves we're Israelites. Okay, what about these other groups?
Okay, and as was alluded to by Yeshub, there's a question here of a consistent standard. Do Benaiah and Kelly Richardson have a consistent standard, right? If we're to hold to El Hayek's approach and assume that Ashkenazim typically hitting in the range of 39% against one of these tribes kits is so low as to disqualify them from being Israelites, shouldn't the even lower scores received by Kelly and his cousin disqualify them as well? And this is somewhat reminiscent of previous discussions which were had about GEDmatch, where certain folks wanted to play games with Oracle, but were less comfortable or less enthusiastic with, for example, comparing how they scored on the Natufian category in the GEDmatch proper, in that GEDROSIA Ancient Eurasia calculator, and comparing that against how others, including Ashkenazim, scored in that same Natufian category, on the same calculator. And if certain folks want to abandon a patrilineal definition of Israelite and instead try to measure people according to some vaguely defined autosomal standard, there's still going to be questions about whether there's a consistent standard, or whether the standard that they're invoking is being applied consistently. So if Kelly and Benaiah want to push El Hayek's platform as the standard, then I would like to invite them to do what Yeshub did. Clearly show your results in the general categories. And if you matched with an individual sample, show that and show how that sample scored across those same general categories, right? And then moreover, go to the population-wide results section and show how you stack up against Ashkenazim in the Turkey tab of the modern genetic similarities portion. But if you're just going to declare that you don't have to prove anything to anyone, or if you're just going to hide your results, honestly, no one should take your claim seriously. And with that, I'll close this brief video here. Hopefully this can be a stepping stone to further conversation on this topic. As always, I invite any comments, questions, or criticisms. I don't censor anyone here, so feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative. And with that, God bless.
Muck running out here stirring pots today.
Yeah, he in the way. He feeling the way today. He trying to throw us under the bus. He want everybody to be mad at us. What's going on, Dunamis? Why you setting us up like y'all set up Teo and them? Where he go?
I ain't trying to set no one up. This is going how our discussion with DNA and Israelites.
Why you trying to set me up, yo?
You just trying to
get in. I did that same site myself. That's like 2.9.
We messing.
Oh, that's where you got 2.9 from. Was that one?
Yeah, that Kelly promoted. He's the subject matter expert.
You gave Aaron L. Hike. You gave Aaron L. Hike access to your credit card, bro.
Yeah, yeah. You have to.
Hey, shout out to you too, because he took one for the team, fam, and what he was able to show. Yeah. What I loved about that video and what we were talking about with the website is like, so basically Aaron Elhike was running off like the model that the Taylor twins would want, like run to its logical conclusion and whatnot, right? With the autosomal model. And what it's showing is if the majority of your recent autosomes are modern West African, that it most likely means that you're not going to be an ancient Levantine autosome. And so the majority of people that were getting hits with Israelite stuff, a lot of times it was showing to be commiserate with, again, your admixture of European DNA. The way that they're doing their modeling, right? So again, this is one of the reasons why we see people just leave DNA alone altogether. And they start, when they go back to their pseudo stuff, they seem to double down and make even more pseudo arguments, ironically.
And now, Elder Green asked a question, and I got the video up with discussion of Igbo and Jews. How did, with the testing they did, who are they comparing it to? Other Jews and whatnot? Because that's where he has a point of contention. Let me see.
All right, so we don't have. We keep saying this. So we're going. I'm going to repeat it because I've heard Avery say it. I heard Moore say it. You know, I think I even heard Shari say it on this channel once as well. So we don't have any bodies of the patriarchs: Abraham, Jacob. You know, any of them. Isaac. We don't have it. So what are we going off of? What are they going off of? They're going off of the DNA of the archaeological finds of people who practice this culture, you know, 2,000 years ago to 3,500 years ago. And when they do these sites, when they do these digs at these sites, and they're finding that these people were practitioners of Israelite culture, then they extract the DNA when they get permission to. And so they're going off of that.
And to clarify, I don't know of any major studies comparing Igbo DNA to Jewish DNA. And if they do that, they're most likely to compare it to the CMH, the congenital haplotype. And so Avery and I went on to vocab channel and demonstrated the issue with the CMH. There's great methodology in the study. The issue is they only applied it to Sephardic. They were looking specifically for connections, but within Sephardic and Ashkenazi populations in 3 different places in the world. They didn't apply it to all of world Jewry. If you apply it to all of world Jewry, we even talk. We go into the methodology and recognitions of that study in and of itself, to where they even they recognize that even amongst the Sephardic and Ashkenazi populations that they were testing, there was a certain percentage of the Kohanim that were still YAP positive, but that were downstream of DE and whatnot. Like they're relatives of the majority of people of African American males and whatnot, right? Most of us are positive. So from there, we also broke down the genetic study about the Samaritan Kohanim, breaking down the fact that they're 100% positive, right? Even though they're in a population that has 2 haplogroups, the majority of the population is haplogroup J, but the Kohanim were 100% haplogroup E, E1B1B, EM78 to be exact. And so when they use the CMH for the comparison, like they do this with the limb and whatnot, right? It's not right and exact to say that like to assume that that's the genetics of Abraham, Isaac, or Jacob. What you can do with it, though, right, is the haplogroup that they were able to find with the methodology that they used, is they were able to take it back to a time period, going back to a common ancestor, to a time period that's commiserate with the time period like Moses or Aaron, etc. whatnot, right? So that's going back to that founding population of the mixed multitude and whatnot, right? So they were able to the best they're able to do, if they're being honest with it, is they can show you a haplogroup that they can point to being part of potentially being part of the mixed multitude. And so when they do comparisons, typically like OG's right, when you see in sites like Ariel hikes or something like My Transhistory, they're trying to go off of like ancient archaeological digs or whatnot, right? But when they're talking about comparing people to do they have the Jewish marker or something like that, they're talking about the CMH, which is not technically right and exact, but it is also based off good methodology. And shout out to Elder Green, got a lot of love for Elder Green.
No, they're Dunamis. Yeah, he must have stepped away.
They must assume we're about to be long-winded.
I know, right? But this is like, we try to make it clear, like we're not saying that E1B1A wasn't a part of or isn't the direct descendant of Jacob. What we're saying is we have to keep an open mind because we don't have the bodies. We can't just say because all of us are from sub-Saharan Africa or West Africa, came in, over here on slave ships, that we are definitely the descendants of Jacob. What we can do is say, we can connect E1B1A or sub-Saharan African DNA going back to the founding of the nation of Israel. So at best, we could be converts, part of the mixed multitude, and not converts, recent converts. We can actually show, that there are Jewish sects with sub-Saharan Africa that mix with sub-Saharan Africans. So we don't rule it out, but we have to be careful.
I'm with you, and it's just more so because it's Elder Green that asks, not say Green, because with the Bet Dean and whatnot, he doesn't understand it. I hold it too. Basically, no one can really show him who they could descend from Jacob, as it stands right now.
Yeah, as it stands right now, you can't. But I'll tell you right now, Elder Green, if I went to that same Beit Din and laid down my information, like there could actually literally be like you can see a similar ruling for people in the Americas with a way better foundation and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
Like I would love to, like that was my thing. I was trying to help Remy out. I was like, because you can actually make an argument, you know what I'm saying? But like you would have to go back and undo a lot of stuff, and that's what a lot of people don't want to do. Like, so Remy doesn't want to go back and say, well, no, I'm not. Like, he doesn't want to claim that he's connected to the Yoruba, right? Even though we're trying to show my man studies, like, hey, this study right here that we're just talking about, it's like it says like the modern Jewish populations, eight different populations of them carry ancient sub-Saharan African DNA to 3 to 5%, that is commiserate with the Yoruba and the Luya populations and whatnot, of which you share genetics and whatnot. He doesn't want to do that kind of stuff, right? That's unfortunate because there is realistic pictures we can paint.
But why does he want to do that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying, why does he? Well, we can't speak to motivation per se, but it is why though. If you would speculate,
like OG said earlier, like it sounds like a lot of tribalism when we listen to it.
Yeah,
it just straight up tribalism. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I would have to agree. Also, Red Letter, please said. So, are you all saying that prophecy in Scripture can't tell us who are Israelites today plus the history? No, we're not saying that. What we're saying is that we have to take a full approach, right? So yeah, Scripture may be able to tell you, but it can't tell you definitely, because there's going to be people from different areas or even don't look like you that may have felt some of those curses. I don't like to use the curses, don't like to use them because, you know, they're vague at best. I'm not saying that they're not right, but the way it's being used to direct toward one particular group of African Americans or just Negro, it's convoluted. So, you know, because there are people who probably went through some of these curses that are way out of your sight that you don't see, and they might not look like you. They may not look like you. So, you know, no, we're not saying that Scripture is wrong, or we just are very methodological. Sorry, getting tongue-tied on how we approach the situation. That's it.
Yeah, and we're definitely saying that Deuteronomy is not a DNA test, fam.
Because that's the biggest thing. If you folks want to invoke Scripture, that's fine, but it opens the door to a lot of other people.
Right, and then what happens is we get hit with that a lot because people misconstrue the things that we're saying because, or they get an emotional reaction to what we're saying because they're not really understanding where we're coming from, and then not only that, but their presupposition, you know, for the awakening causes them not to want to look into other avenues. You know, they just want to go by Scripture, and that's really hard to do. This is why, you know, Israel has been hitting a lot of walls when it comes to these arguments. Hit a lot of walls, you know. So by putting science, you know, I mean, Christian scientists have been doing this for a long time, going out and looking for Noah's Ark, going out and, you know, looking for Galilee and all of these different places. You know what I mean? They've been doing this for a while, trying to prove out the Bible. You know, so we're not doing anything any different. You know, we're just trying to prove it out, but it has to make sense to us. You know, it may not have to make sense for you in that way, but for us in this group, it has to make sense.
Yep. And then let's see now. Let's go. We got some time. The saga of the Igbo and the Jews. Hold on, let's see where without Deuteronomy, can we see anything that points who could be a part of the tribes from Scripture?
What happened? Repeat that. I was doing something.
Saying without Deuteronomy, can we see anything that points to who could be part of the tribes from Scripture? I mean, Moore said something the other day. You might have some folks who are bloodline that don't keep the practices, and some folks who keep the practices on bloodline. But to me, the biggest thing is just kind of like just the practices, right? It doesn't necessarily show who's who, but I say with the converse, just like the natural born, and it comes down to the nation of Israel.
Yeah, and even with that, with the material culture, you got parts of the Bible where Israelites lost their material culture. They lost their Torah, they lost their language, all that type of stuff. Yeah. So like this is why like looking at the full spectrum becomes important, because like even in the Bible, Israelites kept their lineage via genealogy, right? The genealogy of their fathers and whatnot. It's basically the same thing as DNA, right? Basically the same thing as we're talking about with haplogroups and whatnot, right? This is why, like the Bible talks about dispersions to multiple parts of the world. It talks about where these places are, etc. It talks about all kind of stuff, right? And so it's not just a a lot of people are looking for like one verse to fix everything, and the reality is like when you look at the totality of the thing, fam, it's you're gonna see a very, very big picture that has a lot of detail to it. We need to take in DNA, we need to take in material culture, we need to take in migrations, we need to take in all this stuff to get a clear picture and see what we can match up, what we can't match up, right? Which is why we can say people using these arguments about like everybody's all one thing coming off the slave ship. You can't, like, well, that's not what, like, if we were to do the genealogy of the father thing, like the Torah says, well, that's not what the DNA is playing out, because we all don't have the same haplogroup, right? That's not what the DNA is playing out, right? Like, so if I go via the genealogy, go by the genealogy of the father, then that's not what it is, right? If I go just by location, that doesn't work either, because again, it's different lineages in different spots and whatnot, right? Unless I adopt a mixed multitude concept, like that's the only way I could ever even try to make a large number happen, right? Coming off the slave ship or whatnot. But even with that, like that, again, that's you can't make that everybody, right? Because we can go back to the places in Africa and we can find out what they were practicing and whatnot, right? And the Central and Western Sahel is again the most Hebrew part of West Africa, right? We're not seeing that being everybody. We're seeing that being a percentage of the slave trade.
Let's see, red letter. Were not the tribes mixed amongst the nations before Judah, Benjamin, and Levi? Yeah.
Hold on, what was that?
Yeah, I'm trying to make out what he's trying to say. We're not the tribes mixed amongst the nations before Judah, Benjamin, and Levi.
Yeah, I'm not.
I need clarification on that question, bro.
Yeah, let me let this play, and then he clarify. Fair use.
Greetings. Glory to God on the highest, and on earth, peace to people of goodwill. So I just stumbled across this thread, which is nearly a year old. It's from July 18th of 2023. So just in about 4 days, this thread will be a year old. But looking at it now, I felt that there was an interesting exchange in the comment section of this thread, and I thought it was worth documenting and discussing, hence this short video, which is going to look at it. So first, I'm going to read through the post at the start of this thread, and then I want to look at an exchange in the comment section, as I said. So jumping right in, this thread, it starts with a post by Rav Mordecai Ben Avraham, a public post on Facebook, and he writes the following, quote, "This is probably one of the most important moments in African-American history. A friend and colleague, Rabbi Yehonatan Elazar de Mota, head of the International Jewish Court and professor at Antwerp University in Belgium, is meeting with the elders of the Igbo community in Nigeria, explaining the historical and anthropological connections between the Igbo people and the 12 tribes of Israel. In 2014, there was a ruling by Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky of blessed memory, authenticating the relationship between the Igbo tribe in Nigeria with the biblical 12 tribes of Israel." Really quick note here, if I can interject, regarding there being a ruling by Chaim Kanievsky, I'm not sure if the author of this post is referring to a specific document, like a written psak din, or if he's just referring to a video which had been floating around social media in which some Jews were having a very short impromptu conversation with a very elderly Kanievsky, in which they give him like literally a minute-long introduction to 21st century Jewish practice amongst the Igbo, and then Kanievsky shares his sort of, off-the-cuff opinion.
בניגריה, בתי כנסת גדולים ביותר. הוא נמצא בארץ ישראל. אני נמצא בארץ ישראל. יש שם 55 בתי כנסיות. שם, שהפכו שינגרים. אפריקה.
והם אומרים שהם שייכים לשבטים.
הם אומרים שהם שייכים לעשרת השבטים.
זה אומר שהם עושים בריס מילה, הם עושים שבס. יש להם מקווה.
יש להם ספר תורה. זה בית כנסת מגן אברהם. אבל יש להם פה בית כנסת מגן אברהם.
יש להם ספר תורה, הם גביל. גבילים.
יש להם, הם טוענים שהם משבט אפרים, שבט גד, וממש שומרים תורה ומצוות, כמונו.
רק מה, הם מוכנים להתגייר.
מה שמוכנים להתגייר.
הם מוכנים להתגייר, והשאלה שלנו האם בכלל לעזור להם או
לדחות אותם.
גיור לחומרה, הם מוכנים לעשות גיור לחומרה.
אז לעזור להם?
כן.
Now, if there's some other document, if there's like a written Sakdin that Kanievsky produced, I would love to look it over. But if the ruling that this Facebook post is referring to is just that short conversation that you saw, I'd honestly, and with all due respect, I'd be reluctant to invest too much gravity into that, you know, as depicting it as a rabbinic ruling. But whatever the case, jumping back in, he says, why are conversations and rabbinic rulings significant to African Americans? Most historians unanimously agree that out of the 1.7 million slaves sold from the west of Africa during the transatlantic slave trade, 1.3 million of those slaves were Igbo Jews. Now, if I can interject here really quickly, I just want to say that that's, with all due respect, that it seems like a bit of an overstatement. It's one thing to say that Igbos made a significant contribution to the population that was brought over in the transatlantic slave trade, but it's quite a different thing to say that most historians agree that they were Jews. Like this, the way this is worded, now maybe he wrote it quickly and didn't intend to write it this way, but the way it's written, it seems to be stating that most historians agree that 1 million Jews were brought over from West Africa in the transatlantic slave trade. That I really don't think that's the case, that most historians agree on that. But whatever the case, let's move on. He says this is a vital part to African-American history, and for some reason, it has been removed from the American historical narrative of Black people. The education of the beauty of Jewish diversity, specifically in the area of the African-American experience, has to be introduced and standardized in the North American education system as a form of social justice and the celebration of diversity. The information of the Jewish experience throughout Africa, expressed in an educational context, will dispel a lot of anti-Semitism. Also, it will lead to the reestablishing of the close, long relationship the African-American and Jewish communities in North America have shared historically. Keep in mind, my argument is not that Black Americans are descendants of the 12 tribes, as Black is now a pop culture phrase people of color all over the world use for self-identification, but rather there were over 1 million Igbo Jews who were descendants of the 12 tribes sold into North America during the transatlantic slave trade. It's the lack of Jewish education around Jewish diversity which is leading to much of the anti-Semitism in the world today. The enemies of Israel are convincing the world in a time of economic disparity that Jews are a white elitist race collaborating with the rest of the world elites. Anyone living in Israel can attest that Jews come in all shapes and colors and have been singled out, abused by the majority almost on every continent in the world for being minorities. Doesn't matter what color or religious observance level the Jew is. As a collective, they have been victims of anti-Semitism, racism, bigotry, leading to murders and violent abuse for thousands of years. The truth shall close to 90 people. And then he shares this video from the Association of Jewish Faith Incorporated, which has Rabbi Demota in Nigeria. But what I wanted to get into was this thread in the comments section. And it's a sub-thread that starts with a comment from Sheis Rishon. And for those who don't know who Sheis Rishon is, he's also known as Manish Tana on social media. For years now, he's been fairly active on social media. Also, he's the gentleman in this picture, which is a fairly famous picture. It seems to come up quite a bit online in conversations about Black Jews. And so he's a gentleman living in New York who's of West African descent and who's also rabbinically Jewish. If I'm not mistaken, he's Orthodox Jewish. But jumping right into the subthread, Sheis Rishon writes, historians agree that 1.3 million of those slaves were Igbo, but not all Igbo tribes are Jewish. And then there's a comment from Yehonatan Elazar de Mota. That's what the Hebrew text is. That's his name, just in Hebrew characters. And he writes, Sheis Rishon, have you come to Igbo land before? And Sheis Rishon writes, I have not, and I'm referencing inter-Igbo historical narratives for my statement, particularly ones that arose in the wake of Remi Ilona's work in the early aughts. And Rabbi Demota says, all right. Then Rav Mordecai ben Avraham comments, he says, Sheis Rishon, over the centuries, there have been Igbo people who have been converted to Christianity and Islam. Nevertheless, Igbo's roots are 100% descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. This phenomenon is not exclusive to Igbos. It exists all over the world, with Jews assimilating through war, conquest, and other scenarios. And then Mordecai ben Avraham tags Remy Ilona, and he says, thoughts on what was said? So that was nearly a year ago, about 51 weeks ago. And unfortunately, Remy Ilona never participated in the thread. I wish he had. It would have been interesting to see his contributions on this. But whatever the case, then Rav Mordecai ben Avraham tags Susanna Heschel, if I'm not mistaken. She's a relative of Joshua Heschel, the famous scholar. Mordecai ben Avraham writes, Professor, this is one of the academic initiatives I would love to talk to you about. When you come to Israel, it's an opportunity for the African-American community to expand the narrative of their existence in North America, part of the legacy of your family. And then Shais Rishon writes, and here he's writing in reference to what Mordecai ben Avraham said about their history being 100%, the Igbos being 100% descended from Israelites. He says, apparently, that's a debate even among Igbo themselves. And then he writes case in point, and he shares this article from CNN, and then he shared this excerpt, the screenshot, which shares an excerpt from that article, and it states the following. Even among Igbo people, the claim to be Jews elicits strong criticism. One critic, Catherine Ocholonu, and forgive me if I'm mispronouncing her surname, one critic, Catherine Ocholonu, attributes Jewish identification among the Igbo as a result of Christianity brought by missionaries, since most Igbo people are Christians. Quote, everybody is excited to say they belong to the people of the Bible because the Bible is reigning. It's in, says Ocholonu, a prominent researcher on Igbo history and culture. In her award-winning book, They Lived Before Adam, Ocholonu proposes that Igbo civilization is older than that of the Israelites. She feels that Igbo people are whitewashing their history and diminishing the value of their own culture by attempting to link their heritage to Jews. And if I could, aside from that, I would recommend a video that appears on the Brother Garfield podcast. It aired in February of 2023. It was a video titled 20 for 20, number 1, 2 Igbo men, 2 different opinions, Remy Ilona and Medicine Shell. As in that video, the host contrasts Remy Ilona's perspective with that of a different Igbo gentleman, that being the gentleman who runs the Medicine Shell channel, who's similarly steeped in Igbo culture, yet who is not at all convinced about the claims of Israelite heritage. And so what you see is that there are a number of Igbos who are skeptical about these claims of Israelite heritage for the Igbo people. And that's worthy of note. So this is not a universal position even among Igbos, and that's Shais's point. That was the point in his article and so on. But whatever the case, getting back into the subthread, Rabbi Demota says, Shais Rishon, this is recent history among Igbos. Have you read the numerous ethnographies before the quote-unquote white man brought his religion to Igbo land? And if I can interject here really quickly, I must confess, I found that statement particularly interesting. If I understand Rabbi Demota correctly, he's saying, he seems to be referring to written ethnographies of the Igbo, which were written before the colonial period. If that is indeed what he's referring to, I'd be curious what text he has in mind. Now, I might comment on the thread to attempt to ask him directly, but in the meantime, if Rabbi Demota or anyone else familiar with this topic could share what texts are being referred to, like, for example, share such in the comment on this video or reach out to me elsewhere on social media, that would be greatly appreciated, because I'm honestly uncertain what he's referring to. But whatever the case, getting back in to this thread, Shais Rishon responds to Mordecai ben Avraham. He says, he's clarifying here. He says, so saying that some tribes negates neither narrative, as those Igbo who reject the Jewish descent narrative might actually not be Jewish, as aligns with the, and then he gives this Hebrew statement, Hape she'asar hu hape she'hetir, which means roughly the mouth that binds is the mouth that loosens, or the mouth that prohibits something is also the mouth that permits something. But I like the idea of binding and loosing, right? That's the general thought here. Apparently this is some sort of a line or dictum within rabbinic thought, or maybe Jewish law, rabbinic law, I don't know. But it is interesting, because it makes you wonder if he's intends to insinuate that at least some Igbo non-Jews might descend from Igbo Jews. That would also be interesting. But whatever the case, I guess maybe that needs more conversation. But continuing on, Rav Mordecai ben Avraham says, Shais, your argument is only relative to today's basis. The conversation we're having is during the transatlantic slave trade. Now, if you have statistical data on during that specific time, then we have a basis of discussion. And Shais responds, my argument applies to today, the transatlantic slave trade, and before. Also, there is no statistical data in either direction, hence how we're even able to have the question of this argument. Now, if I could comment here really quickly, I have to say that it's interesting that Mordecai Avraham he made a rather sweeping claim when he said that Igbos are 100% descended from ancient Israelites. And that would raise a question about the statistical data supporting that claim. I seriously doubt that there is serious statistical data in that regard. But without providing such, he just makes the claim. And yet when Shais notes that there is this skepticism amongst Igbos, it's then that Rav Mordecai raises rightly the question of statistical data. And I think it's right for Shais Rishon to point out that we don't seem to have significant statistical data either way, right? Unless we get into genetics, which is a really interesting question. But maybe you can't really get into genetics if it's a halakhic question, because you could descend from someone who, who's a convert in a halakhic model and be, a part of Israel as well. I don't know. So it's complex. The data question is an open question. And I think that's come out in some of the discussions on Rabbi Demota's Psak Din. There's a number of videos on that. But whatever the case, getting back into Shais Rishon's comment, he says, we are presented with two different internal narratives for the Igbo. Narrative A, Igbo are not of Jewish descent. Narrative B, all Igbo are Jewish and descended from Edi et al., or et cetera, and so on, right? And he says, this leaves us with three scenarios. Scenario one, narrative A is correct. This is untenable given the testaments of Oluwade Equiano et al., and even European Jewish figures. Clearly, there are Igbo with Jewish descent and for centuries before European contact. Scenario two, narrative B is correct. This creates two possibilities. Possibility one, it is either wholly correct and those who deny Jewish ancestry are mistaken, or two, it is incorrect and not every Igbo is Jewish descended. In the case of possibility one, given the context and applications of Ketubot 2.5, Yevamot 46b, Ramban in Isurei Bia 1917, Siftei Kohen on the Shulchan Aruch, Even Ezer 2, Bartenura on Kiddushin 4.4 et al., or etc., concerning claims of Jewishness or descent or conversion, halachically, the naysayers would be assumed not to be Jewish, or at least questioned, which leads to the possibility of scenario 3, narrative A and B are both correct, and the people that we have come to know as Igbo are a hybrid group composed of Jewish-descended Africans and local proto-Igbo, if you will, that became the Igbo group that Europeans later encountered. I think that's a fair scenario. And he says, consider a sci-fi analogy. And I just want to say I love this analogy. He says, consider a sci-fi analogy. Imagine if in 500 years, neighborhoods have evolved their own cultures. And 500 years later, a historian doing due diligence and comparing current and ancient practices determines that anyone descended from the Crown Heights neighborhood is of Jewish descent. Meanwhile, there are other Crown Heights descendants that dispute the narrative and say that they are not of Jewish descent. Is it true that Crown Heights was a Jewish neighborhood? Yes. Are the naysayers correct in saying that they are not of Jewish descent? Yes. Is there a higher chance / percentage that someone Crown Heights descended is Jewish? Yes. Does that mean that all Crown Heights descended people are of Jewish descent? No. If I could, I just want to jump in and say that I really appreciate that analogy. I've attempted to make variations of the same point before. For example, in this tweet from 2022, I offered this analogy. I said, just as the proposition there were Jews in Western Europe does not entail the conclusion, therefore Western Europeans are Israelites, so too the proposition there were Jews in West Africa does not entail the conclusion, therefore West Africans are Israelites. And we can refine the analogy to make it a smaller territory, a range of people. For example, I'm from New York, and there are lots of Jews in New York, but that doesn't mean that I'm Jewish. And so too, with the same sort of logic, there are lots of Chinese people in New York, but that doesn't mean I'm Chinese, right? I hope you get the point. But I like how Shais refined it even further and to an even smaller point, as he refined it further to a specific neighborhood, that being the Crown Heights neighborhood in Brooklyn, a neighborhood that has lots of people who would be recognized as halachically Jewish by rabbinic Jews, and so too lots of other people who would not be recognized as halachically Jewish by the same rabbinic system. And the idea that there may be descendants of Jews among the Igbo is not absurd, right? A simple recourse to Deuteronomy 28:64 could make that plausible insofar that, Jews or Israelites, however you want to define them, have been spread all over the globe. They've been sprinkled among nigh every population, right? But this leap to what Mordecai ben Avraham was saying, where Igbos are 100% descended from ancient Israelites, that seems to, at the very least, raise questions of how he reached such an extraordinary conclusion, right? And honestly, with all due respect, I don't think anything from Remy Ilona or Rabbi Demota or that short conversation with Rabbi Kanievsky, can justify that sort of a conclusion. But just to close out the thread, Shais Rishon finishes it off by saying, at any rate, saying that some Igbo are Jewish descended is unequivocally true and can be confidently stood on regardless of either claim. To say that all is a tenuous argument to operate from that can be manipulated by bad faith actors on whichever side. And with that, I'll stop here. The conversation itself stopped here. There was no further comment from Mordecai ben Avraham or Rabbi Demota. And I just simply want to say that this is merely a step in a larger conversation. I just wanted to briefly document and discuss this exchange on Facebook, as I think others might find it interesting. And as always, I welcome any comments, questions, or criticisms. Again, I don't censor anyone here, so feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative. And God bless.
That was just the last one. We can go further another time, but
Real quick.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This is kind of off topic, but Marvin had asked a question. So are Ashkenazi Jews having the same conversation among themselves online about their heritage and where they come from? Are they totally convinced? I would say yes, they are having these conversations. They do question some things. There are Ashkenazi Jews that are of the thought process of it's possible that they're not. Some of them are not, but they deal with halakhic. So they still consider themselves Jewish. They practice the faith. They practice, what I'm saying, the culture. So they consider themselves Jews, so much so that they're reaching out to other people and saying, like Harry Rosenberg, he'll say, it's possible that we're not Jews, but it's possible we are. Same thing with the African Americans. It's possible they are, So they try to reach across the table and say, well, let's just all practice the culture instead of trying to figure out who is and who isn't. Why don't we just come together and just practice the culture? So yes, these conversations are being had by Ashkenazi Jews as well as Sephardic Jews, and some of the MENA population are open to discussion on this as well.
Because I think that's one of the biggest differences, like you said, the halakhic. So once you're a convert, I'm saying, there's not too much of a push. So
yeah, they don't really trip on that. You know what I mean? This is why you see a lot of African Americans, you'll see them practicing rabbinical Judaism. They're not tripping on that. A lot of us probably wouldn't do that because we're Christ followers. We're messianic, so we wouldn't choose to be rabbinic, or be halakhic. Take the halakhic route and be follow rabbinical Judaism. A lot of us we come out of the Christian church. You know what I mean? And we follow, we believe salvation is through Yeshua or Christ himself. So, so there's just, whatever floats your boat, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, because I think the next step would be, was it Rue going around to become a rabbi for a unified front to make a group that would reflect the voice.
Yeah, but Rue is messianic.
Yeah, because he was doing the route to where to be messianic and to be accepted in Jewish circles.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's putting in a lot of work. We barely hear from the brother. He always, he jumps in, in our conversations a whole lot when we're together, but sometimes he'll disappear. That's because he's really studying. He's really working hard. So, shout out to my brother, Rue.
Yes, sir. So, Dunamis, what was you saying about this, the video about Rabbi Demota and
man,
Ben Abraham is true.
I was trying to find one where Abu breaks it down, but he has a couple. Because it's just let me play this. Let me just play tell me if you can hear this. Let me see if y'all can hear this.
Now, Shalom, I'm listening kind of in real time to Berean live stream right now. And I think I heard it be said that the Bet Din made a ruling that, I don't know what particular group it was, they made a ruling concerning that they were Jews, or Israelites or Jews. So they made a ruling that they were Jews. So my question is, for the Bet Din to make that ruling that whoever they were talking about were Jews, how do the Bet Din prove that they Jews? That's my question.
So that's an initial thing at home.
Now I'm
Yeah, but
asking
see, the
that
bet.
because a harlot Berean.
Yeah, that's what Elder Green was trying to understand. That it's like who gives them the authority to say who's a Jew and who's not? That's the biggest thing to where, yeah.
No, I get it, but I guess see, they're doing it from the Betin. When they was looking at the Igbo, they was looking at how they practice the culture. If they could prove they practice the culture, did they have a Torah? Did they? This is what the Betin went off of. You know what I mean? The rabbinical, the Jews who the governing body. These are what they were looking for. So so if they're looking for that in the Igbo, then they would have to meet that same standard. I don't think they're really tripping over, direct lineage, as much as who's practicing the culture. Can they prove they was practicing the culture? Can they prove, because it's hard to prove lineage. Let's be real. You may have a list of family members on a tree saying that they go back to here, but who really knows? Right, so they're just going off of the culture. Who's practicing the culture? The government body is actually are these people practicing the culture? Are they actually active? Do they have a Torah? What are their practices? All of these things. So they're going off of those standards, and these are the same standards that they live by. So and apparently the Sephardic Jews agree that they're following the practice. That they've proven that they've been following these practices, for however long.
Well, let's be 1,000,000% clear. So Abu was talking about two situations real quick. Like, so one, there was a conversation to where somebody was trying to reference to where they were saying like rabbinic Jews in Israel as a Beit Din were recognizing people as Jews, and that's not quite what was going on. And then there's this group that Rabbi Namota's about. With that their Beit Din made a ruling about the Ebos. They didn't rule that the Ebos were Jews. They ruled that they're Anusim. They ruled that they were Jews that converted to other things and whatnot. They could come back to the thing. So the difference, right? They ruled that they're Anusim, that they had the right to come back if they wanted to, right? Not that they're Jews. That they don't recognize them as Jews based upon that ruling. And even so, that ruling doesn't apply universally across the board to all Jewish bodies in the diaspora. It applies to whatever group recognizes that Beit Din or whatnot, right? And to be clear, in their ruling, they did make a genetic, like they talk about practices and all types of stuff, but they did make a genetic argument or whatnot. And when you examine that genetic argument, it's not really based on anything founded in fact. They were trying to talk about that the Igbo were proven to paternally go back to the Levant, and that's not been proven yet. Again, there's way better arguments to make, and I'm someone who believes that you can make an argument for like the Southern Nigerian Jews, Cross River Jews, etc., whatnot. I do believe that you can find them amongst different groups. Something that Remy Lona said recently that I find that I appreciate is that I think the last time I talked to him, he was talking about the fact that not all Igbo are the same. Right, like he was switching up to like he wasn't trying to say all Igbo at this point, right? And that's the issue with this claim here is trying to say that like all 1.3 Igbo that came off the slave ships were Jews or whatnot, because you can't really do that, right? Like that, there's nothing to base that off of. You can't you can't base it off the practices coming off the slave ship because they weren't practicing Jewish practices coming off the slave ship. Aside from potentially, aside from like maybe circumcision, maybe a couple of things that were prominent in like West Africa, right? But even Remy is going to tell you that they weren't practicing the thing at the time, right? So this is the whole reason why they're being called Anusim is because they had stopped the practices at one point in time, and so. There's better arguments to make than what were made in the ruling of that Beit Din or the Sakdin and whatnot. I'm not casting aspersion on them or whatnot. I'm just saying there's way better arguments to make. And what's interesting about this, and the Christians should find this interesting, because we keep talking about the concept of and it's something I keep trying to hit home, is the concept of the fact that there were Christians that came off the slave ship as well or whatnot, right? And so what we keep finding is that, like, the areas of West Africa that had Christians that were prior to colonialism and whatnot, they're the same parts of West Africa that also have Jews and whatnot, right? So this story about migration and genetics and all this stuff concerning these peoples, they concern a lot of different people's historical arguments and whatnot, right? Like, so if you want to understand like West African Christianity and the people that are up and whatnot, this is the same argument. They're coming from this same part of West Africa. Like, so there's people that come from like Senegal and the Gambia and southern Mauritania, like in Takarur, like the Christian kingdom of Takarur. But there's also this group of people that come from like northern Nigeria and going into Chad, etc., whatnot. That's connected to the Central Sahel or whatnot. That you're seeing not only Christian practices and whatnot coming through, being affected by like Nubian Christianity, etc., but you're also finding this is a population of people in the Hausa territories of northern Nigeria that also had Jews that had the Torah amongst them, and they were being taken into slavery, and they eventually converted to Islam and whatnot, and we can see them in Morocco today. They're called the Gnawa, right? They're famous for having musical festivals every year and whatnot. A lot of people like to connect their music to our music with the blues and whatnot, and how we express ourselves and whatnot. We come from the same slave trade and whatnot, right? So there's ways to make connection to this thing, right? And I wish to God people like Remy and others would be open to making the better arguments and whatnot. Because it's a shame that someone from America can point to more material culture than what you can point to, and we came off the slave ships or whatnot, right? And if we actually do it right, we can point to a lot more culture that connects and whatnot, and make it more realistic. You just have to accept a some and not all argument, right? Someone like Remy would have to accept, okay, I might have to rewrite some books, or I might have to recognize I connect to other people in southern Nigeria that aren't Igbo. And I might I might connect to them more than I connect to other Igbo, right? Because again, they don't all have the same haplogroups. There's different connections, there's different practices, etc. There's different reasons for saying that, right? But the issue is we're finding that a lot of people, like OG was talking about earlier, was that they have a lot of vested interest in not switching up their conversation and not being accountable to the public with what they're saying, because they have to protect themselves financially, right? And I would say this to them, right? The public actually respects honesty a lot more than what you think. When you say I was wrong for that, like, you know what, there's a better way of doing this. You know what, I didn't know as much then as I know now. People respect that. People respect growth. The only reason, the only reason you're trying to cling to something like that is because you have this cult of personality that you're trying to keep alive and whatnot. And the reality is, fam, we're all human beings. We all put on our pants one leg at a time, fam. You know what I'm saying? We're all gonna live. We're all gonna live now. We all need the redemption of the Most High. You understand what I'm saying?
Facts. I know a lot of people try. I'm bringing the brother up because a lot of people, speak on him negatively, because of his viewpoints on certain things. But let's look at your shoe, right? We're talking about how his channel had upwards of, I think he lost like more than half of his viewership. He's down to like 10,000 subscribers because he changed his view, right? He cleansed himself of a certain viewpoint. And to me, if you have the courage to do something like that, knowing, that you're sacrificing a lot of your following, the people who respect you and listen to you, and be able to, turn away from that point of view and be honest, and then leave up a lot of the things you used to say, and then, instead of removing all of your old videos, you leave them there to show the growth, right? It's the same thing with these brothers to me. 50,000, 60,000, 30, 40,000 subscribers. They are so afraid of losing their followers and their money, that they will not change. They will continue knowing that they're wrong, knowing that they're putting misinformation out, and continue to put misinformation out just because of their pockets.
And I'm gonna keep it a stack. From all my conversations I've had with Nigerians from on the internet, on Clubhouse and other places and whatnot, people like Remy alone are a minority voice in Igbo land, not a majority voice. Man. There's a lot of people saying no, we don't agree with this thing like that, right? But that also goes back to this thing like. So one thing I do appreciate about part of that conversation that was had in the previous video was a conversation about like being like proto Igbos and the Igbos that moved in. Yeah, that's a real thing. No, that's a real thing, and that should be understood because that means there's a migration coming in, right? That means not everybody's the same people. And if not everybody's the same people, they shouldn't have the same lineage and whatnot, right? And not all Igbos do, right? So this whole concept of everybody's the same or all 1.3, you cannot do that. That's not how this thing works in any way, shape, or form, right? You can say that 1.3 million Igbo came off the slave ships. Okay, we can do that part, and we gotta leave it there, like you know what I'm saying. Unless we and from there you do further study and testing and whatnot, right?
All right, y'all. Nothing else. Shut it down. All right, thank y'all. This part we continue. Yeah, I think that the discussion about culture and whatnot is important, especially going forward, to see how things can play out today and what things can be picked back up.
Yeah, and I think that's extremely important going forward because if we can point to like to Jews, Christians, and Muslims, etc., coming up the slave ships and whatnot, right? Then what practices of theirs can we find? What aspects? Something I like hearing a lot in the urban apologist community is they believe in conserving whatever aspect of your culture you can match up with the Bible. That doesn't go against the Bible, right? And so I think we need to have a lot more conversations in terms of that material culture and what it looks like coming off the slave ship, but not for a bunch of groups of different people, right? Because that'll help. Again, the clearer we can make this picture of like how much we're a legit mixed multitude, the less people can come at us with pseudo arguments and whatnot. And we appreciate y'all for the time.
All right. I'm going to pause that right there. That's the end of the live stream. I just wanted to look at some of the comments that were covered in here. Let me see. I might change screen here to get a better sense of the comments that were in the live chat. Let's see. There's a few that I wanted to look at. So, for example, there was a few from the NHIT, which is the Nazarene Hebrew Institute of Technology. And, for example, that gentleman or those gentlemen ask Orthodox Moor, that's right here towards the bottom right of your screen, ask if Orthodox Moor has seen the Rabbinical Jewish Court's letter. And my understanding, he's asking about specifically Demota's ruling, and I'm very confident that Moore has seen that. It's been covered in a couple of videos that Moore has seen and commented on in the respective live chats of those videos or comment sections of those videos. Let's see what else there is here. There was something else that really caught my eye before I go off the air. Let's see. I think there's a gentleman named The Scribe. Here we go. So you may see this. Let me see if I can put it up top. Forgive me. So the Scribe wrote, Berean TV, let's stop the capping. That's this one right here. I'll try to highlight it. So Berean TV, stop the capping. Every one of y'all believe that the white man is the authority to declare who is and isn't, an Israelite, I guess he says. And then he says, so, and this is just a couple comments lower, if the white man says Igbos are Jews, y'all accept it. Okay, this is what I would say. It's a little weird to sort of, first off, treat quote unquote the white man as some sort of monolithic figure, with only one opinion on any particular matter. But it's even stranger, and I don't think this person's doing this intentionally. I think they only have a vague notion of where this support for this Igbo halakhic ruling in favor of the Igbo is coming from. But even if it's unintentional, and I assume it's unintentional, it's especially weird to let Rabbi Demota, be the embodiment of the monolithic quote unquote white man. I thought that was a little strange. and it's a misconception about the panel and about the people who come on Berean. It's this assumption that there's just this deference to one source, and somehow this source is morphological. What I would say is that on Berean TV, any claim can be challenged, right? It doesn't matter who it comes from. It can be scrutinized. It can be explored. The question of the support, the arguments, the methodology, the reasoning behind it, all of that comes up irrespective of the morphology of the person who put forth that argument. And it's unfortunate that some people feel that that's not the case or unaware that that's the case. There's another comment from NHIT. He says this was addressed to Moor. He says, in the original letter, the rabbinical courts ruled that they were the descendants of Hebrew Israelites. I have a copy of the letter. Indeed, that is a discussion in De Mota's ruling. I assume he's referring to De Mota's ruling, not maybe perhaps he's referring to a letter that was sent to William Simpson. I don't know. De Mota does seem to think that there is an Israelite heritage, even patrilineal Israelite heritage to Igbos. But again, the question is about the reasoning behind that. One thing I will say, there is a nuance that a lot of us miss. It came out a little bit in this discussion. It was alluded to, and I put it in the live chat of this particular stream that's airing right now. There's a nuance to De Mota's approach that I think a lot of people miss, and it's something that even I myself have not really zeroed in on. But to be fair to De Mota, this should be pointed out, that De Mota often makes a reference to hazakah, this idea of rabbinic presumption. So, for example, rabbinic presumption can cover, mainstream Jews, Ashkenazim and Sephardim, and more importantly, their Levitical claimants, their Kohen claimants, even if the genetic evidence isn't really there, right? They have this concept of hazakah. And so De Mota has put forth this sort of nuanced argument that just as hazakah can cover mainstream Jews, perhaps so too it can cover the Igbo as well. It's an interesting argument. It's a nuanced argument. It's one that I think everybody has sort of missed, but at least it relates to these questions about, fairness and double standards and all that sort of thing. I don't think there's much else to cover, but I'm glad I captured the live chat. And so with that, I think I'm going to close the stream. And like I said, I just wanted to capture this. But with that, I'll close this. God bless.